Chapter 144. Hearing this, the middle-aged man threw his head back and laughed. Ha 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 ha. What a joke. Do you think you can keep me here? You're too naive. He stared at her with a malicious look on his face. He pulled out a long sword from his waist and said darkly, "Escape. You alone aren't enough to scare me away. On the contrary, you won't be so lucky this time. Sister. I'll help you." Guan Shilin, who had followed the signal left by Fengzhou, leaped onto the wall of the house and looked at the people in the courtyard. After sizing them up, he said, "You deal with that old man. Leave the rest to me." As soon as he finished speaking, he leaped up and waved the sword in his hand. A biting cold sword aura instantly attacked the men in black in the courtyard. Seeing that he had followed her, the corners of her lips curled up under the veil. She didn't forget to tell him, "Brother, leave a few alive for me this time. Don't kill them all." "No problem." His voice was brimming with fighting spirit. The sharp sword in his hand was originally aimed at the black-clothed man's throat, but after hearing her words, the tip of the sword changed direction with a swoosh, aiming at the other party's body. "You still dare to chase me here? Brothers, let's kill him." When the black-clothed man saw him coming towards him with a sharp sword in his hand, he immediately shouted loudly. The people around him responded in a low voice. The 8 of them quickly surrounded him and stabbed at him with the tips of their swords. The surging xian qi in their bodies, the bloodthirsty killing intent, and the sharp sword aura from the tips of their swords whistled in the courtyard. 8 against 1, no matter how one looked at it, the 8 of them would win. Therefore, the middle-aged man only glanced at them and didn't pay them any more attention. Instead, his malicious gaze fell on the woman in front of him. Fengzhou glanced at Guan Shilin and then looked away. He wasn't worried that the man in black would be killed by the men in black. After all, he had not been cultivating for nothing all this time. Her gaze fell on the middle-aged man in front of her. At the same time, she mobilized the dark force in her body and infused it into the dagger in her hand. In the next moment, her figure flashed and swept towards the target in front of her. The blade in her hand brought out a sharp aura that cut through the air and collided with the opponent's long sword. Clang! The middle-aged man blocked her attack with his sword and sneered, "You want to fight me? You're still too inexperienced." Exerting force, the long sword in his hand turned and flew towards her. Whoosh! Whoosh! Fengzhou dodged to the side and rushed forward at the same time. The dagger in his hand cut through Fengzhou's sleeve and stabbed into his flesh, and the smell of blood spread out. She only heard him groan as the sharp sword came at her. She immediately used the sharp sword to block it and lifted her leg to kick. Under his astonished and aghast gaze, the leg that contained the hidden strength of the profound energy landed on his chest, and he was suddenly sent flying. Yes! He let out a muffled groan as he fell back. He felt the blood vessels in his chest churning, and a mouthful of blood rushed up to his throat. Pfft! He steadied himself and looked up. His eyes were filled with disbelief and shock as he looked at the woman in front of him who had attacked so viciously. He asked with some uncertainty, "Are you really Feng Qingge?" If it was Feng Qingge, how could she have such skills in just a few short months? If it wasn't Feng Qingge, then why was her figure so similar? Could it be that she had a fortuitous encounter in the past few months? Thinking of this, his eyes flashed. A fortuitous encounter. Chapter 145. Seeing the gleam in his eyes, Fengzhou sneered, "You'll find out soon enough whether or not I am." As soon as she finished speaking, her movement technique changed and she shot out like a flash of light. Her speed was several times faster than before, causing the shocked middle-aged man to be unable to react in time. By the time he regained his senses, he felt a cold and piercing pain on his neck. "How was it? I told you that you wouldn't be able to escape, right?" A gentle and cold voice rang out from behind him. His entire body stiffened and his eyes widened in shock. His face was filled with disbelief. How could this be? He was a peak martial master. How could she have subdued him in an instant? However, the pain from his neck and the smell of blood made him unable to believe it. He had really been defeated. He had been defeated by a woman whom he had never paid any attention to. Furthermore, this woman was Feng Qingge. TSK, I thought that you would commit suicide after being caught. I didn't think that you would cherish your life more than I imagined. Hearing her mocking voice, the middle-aged man stiffened and closed his eyes. What do you want? That's right, he didn't want to die. How could a peak martial master like him commit suicide? Even though he knew that he wouldn't have a good ending if he were to fall into her hands, he couldn't bring himself to commit suicide. Several blood-curdling screams came from the other side. He opened his eyes and saw that the men in black had all been knocked unconscious on the ground. Their mouths were slightly open and they were unable to close them. It was obvious that their chins had been broken by that man. Seeing this, his gaze darkened and his heart sank to the bottom. They had underestimated their opponents too much. They had thought that they would be able to easily take care of these two people, but instead, they had all been defeated. How could they possibly inform their master of the current situation? I told you that your fists aren't as strong as mine, but you didn't believe me. Guan Shilin raised his leg and kicked the man on the ground before walking towards Fengzhou. He grinned, Xiao Zhou, I've knocked these men out with a chin's break. Fengzhou glanced at the men and said, cripple their cultivation. All right. Without another word, he turned around and crippled those people's cultivation. In an instant, the people who had fainted regained consciousness due to the intense pain when their cultivation disappeared. However, their jaws were pressed so hard that they couldn't make a sound. They could only twitch weakly. Seeing their cultivations crippled in the blink of an eye, the middle-aged man's face finally turned pale, and a trace of panic appeared in his eyes. How could he be willing to let his decades of cultivation be crippled? Tell me what I want to know, or I can give you a quick death. Hearing the voice behind him, the middle-aged man narrowed his eyes and gritted his teeth. If you want to kill me, then kill me. You won't get any information from me. Really? The corner of Fengzhou's lips curled up slightly. Suddenly, he kicked him hard, causing him to bend his knees and kneel down. He used his profound energy to seal his cultivation with one hand, and at the same time, forced a pill into his mouth. Humph. Why feed me poison? If you want to kill me, then kill me. I won't beg for mercy. The middle-aged man snorted coldly. He didn't need to think to know that the pill that dissolved in his mouth was poison. He didn't have the courage to commit suicide. Even if he was unwilling to die in her hands, he wouldn't feel the slightest bit of fear. After sealing his cultivation, she walked out from behind him and played with the dagger in her hand. The smile in her eyes was somewhat strange. Chapter 146. Seeing the strange light in her eyes, the middle-aged man's heart suddenly trembled, and he felt a little uneasy. Brother, go and see if there's a dungeon or something like that. Fengzhou smiled and squinted his eyes sparkling with excitement. Okay. Although Guan Shilin didn't know what she wanted to do, he immediately did as she said, and quickly searched the small house inside and out. What are you trying to do? You'll find out soon enough. Fengzhou laughed softly. Not long after, Guan Shilin returned. Xiao Zhou, there's no dungeon here, but there's a metal cage. It looks like it's used to lock people up. Then throw them all into the metal cage. She gestured for him to bring the middle-aged man over first, and then she fed the others medicine before dragging them to the back. After locking them up in the metal cage, Fengzhou moved a chair over and found a seat to watch the show. Then, as if remembering something, he glanced at his cheap brother and blinked. Brother, do you want to watch too? Watch what? Guan Shilin had a confused look on his face. He only saw her lock them up in the cage, and then she moved a chair over to sit and watch, but he didn't know what she was looking at. Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled a little embarrassedly. It's nothing. Brother, go guard outside the courtyard, and be careful of their people coming in. It was better to send him away first, otherwise, it would be too dirty for his pure heart. All right, then be careful here. If there's anything, just call me. He nodded and walked out without any suspicions, arriving at the outer courtyard to stand guard. Seeing this, she smiled and turned to look at the middle-aged man in the cage, saying, It's not too late to tell me now. If I tell you, I'll let you die a little easier. As soon as he finished speaking, his gaze swept past the few black-clothed men who had slowly regained consciousness. Because their jaws had been smashed, their mouths could not close. However, because they had recovered for a while, their strength had also returned. However, after all, their cultivation had been crippled, and they were now just ordinary people. The sudden heat in his body startled him, especially when he saw Da and the other black-clothed men pulling at his clothes with blurred eyes. His expression changed greatly, and he almost cried out in alarm. You used on us. It wasn't a suspicion, but a certainty. A body's heat couldn't change into a person, and the expressions and reactions of those people couldn't be faked. However, he never thought that she would be able to think of such a method. After all, they were all men. Let me out. Let me out. When he saw those people pulling at each other's clothes, and one of them had already grabbed his leg and pulled at his pants, his face instantly turned pale, and the panic and horror on his face could no longer be concealed. Don't worry, I've already used less medicine on you. They're the ones who took more. Her eyes flashed with a mischievous light, and she said carelessly, There's only one way out for you, and that is to obediently tell me what I want to know. Then, you won't be ravaged by those people, or else, hee. Ah. Get lost. Chapter 147. Hearing this, her lips curled into a smile as she stood up and walked towards the metal cage. Speak. What kind of power does she have under her command? Tell me everything you know and don't play any tricks. Otherwise, the consequences will be dire. Let me out of here first. Otherwise, kill those people first. He kicked the man who was hugging his leg away and retreated to the side of the metal cage. Fengjiu crossed her arms and raised her eyebrows. Her eyes were filled with mockery as she said, It will take a while for the effects of the drug to kick in. If you want to stall for time, I don't mind watching a good show. Lunatic. He cursed in his heart but did not dare to delay any longer. He had no choice but to tell her everything he knew. Poison sect. She muttered softly as a faint light flashed across her half-hidden eyes. The corners of her lips under the veil curled into a mischievous smile. Let me out. Quick. He shouted in panic, but his voice suddenly stopped, and his whole body fell to the ground. The other men saw this and hurriedly rushed over. One of them pulled his pants, and the other tore off his clothes. Fengjiu's eyes were cold as she glanced at the metal cage. Her nonchalant voice was cold as she said, I've never been merciful to my enemies. Since you don't have the courage to commit suicide, I'll help you. I'll make sure you don't have the strength to struggle and have some fun with them. With that, she turned and walked out. Just as she turned around, she heard heavy panting behind her. Guan Shilin, who was guarding outside the courtyard, was stunned when he heard the heavy panting. He was about to go in to take a look when he saw Fengjiu walking out. He immediately went up to her. Xiaozhou, have you dealt with those people? I've dealt with them. Let's go. She smiled as she nodded. But why do I hear that they're still alive and they're still breathing heavily? He was confused and wanted to go in to take a look but was pulled away by her. Don't worry about them. I've fed them poison so they won't live to see tomorrow. Didn't you want more combat experience? Let's go, I'll take you somewhere. She dragged and pushed him out of the room. Upon hearing her words, Guan Shilin's eyes lit up. He hurriedly asked, "Is it their nest? Have you interrogated him?" "That's right, it's their lair. We'll go there tonight and destroy their lair." She wanted to destroy the forces that Su Ruoyun had cultivated overnight. The poison sect's influence had risen in recent years. They mainly relied on poison and also took on assassination missions. Generally, no one dared to provoke the poison sect because no matter how strong they were, they would be poisoned to death by those who liked to use poison before they even realized it. Hence, even if someone was aware of the poison sect's location, no one would have thought of destroying the poison sect. However, they had offended Fingzhou this time. Furthermore, the master of the poison sect was Su Ruoyun, who had a grudge against Fingzhou. Now that an opportunity for revenge had been placed in front of her, she would not let it go so easily. In the pitch-black night, two figures shuttled through the forest. Under the night sky, one could clearly see that they were Fingzhou and Guan Shilin. Suddenly, Guan Shilin reached out and tugged at Fingzhou. He lowered his voice and said, "Xiaozhou, look at this." He pointed at a stone tablet in the bushes. "The poison sect's restricted area. Trespassers will die." Chapter 148. "Xiaozhou, this poison sect is that woman's nest?" Guan Shilin asked in a low voice, feeling a bit incredulous. After all, the poison sect was equivalent to a mid-tier family in Yunhua City. No one knew who the master behind the scenes was. Who would have thought that it would be Su Ruoyun, the person who stole Xiaozhou's identity? "That's right," she replied, then took out a bottle and poured out 2 pills. "Take this. This is an antidote." Hearing this, Guan Shilin took one and took it, then asked worriedly, "Then how are we going to destroy this poison sect? I heard that there are quite a few people in the poison sect, and they're experts in using poison. Can the two of us do it?" Fengzhou also took the pill, then said, "No need to do it directly. We'll fight poison with poison. Let's go." That night was destined to be a sleepless night. In the Feng Manor, Su Ruoyun was still happily waiting for the good news the next day. However, when the sun rose, no one came to report. It was as if a stone had been thrown into the ocean. There was not even the slightest bit of movement. She waited from morning until noon, but there was still no news. Finally, she could not wait any longer, so she excused herself and went to a residence in the southern part of the city. Knock knock. 2 knocks came from the door. She stood outside and looked left and right. After waiting for a while, no one came to open the door. The bad feeling in her heart grew stronger and stronger. She immediately jumped over the wall and entered. It would have been better if she had not entered, but when she entered and saw the scene in the iron cage in the backyard, she could not help but suck in a cold breath. Hiss! That unsightly scene caused her expression to become extremely ugly. Especially when the middle-aged man in the iron cage was also there, she was even more shocked. His strength was equivalent to that of a mid-tier family's pillar. He had always been by her side to make it easier for her to mobilize him. A peak martial master was not someone that could be casually killed by just anyone. However, he had died in such a humiliating manner. This caused her to be both shocked and angry. Could it be the Guan Shilin siblings? But according to our investigation, that Guan Shilin is not even a martial master. How could he lock the left guard, a peak martial master, in the iron cage? She mumbled to herself and felt that her heart was unable to calm down after witnessing this scene. She decided to contact the poison sect and ask about the situation. Thus, when she turned to leave, she set fire to the house. Outside, walking on the street, he still felt a little nauseous when he thought of the unsightly scene just now. Even she couldn't think of such a cruel and hair-raising punishment. Have you heard? That poison sect was exterminated last night. It is said that a fire burned the entire mountain. The fire was only extinguished this morning. Many people went to take a look and said that everything was burned to ashes. Hiss. It can't be, right? Who did this? The poison sect's influence is equivalent to that of a mid-tier family clan. Furthermore, it has been several years since its rise. How could it be annihilated overnight? Hearing the whispers, Su Ruoyan's heart sank. She turned around and looked at the few people at the roadside tea stall. She strode forward and grabbed one of them by the shoulder. Her voice was cold and filled with killing intent as she shouted. What did you just say? Say it again. Hiss. My shoulder. The middle-aged man who had been grabbed by her fingers turned pale from the excruciating pain and broke out in a cold sweat. Chapter 149. Hearing this, Su Ruoyan felt as if her entire body had been placed in an ice cellar. She staggered back a few steps, finding it hard to accept such a piece of news as reality. No, this can't be. It can't be. The middle-aged man took a deep breath and rubbed his sore shoulder. He then replied irritably, What do you mean it can't be? I even went to take a look this morning. The entire mountain top has been burned to the ground. Not a single person is left alive. That's right, the news has spread like wildfire this morning. Many families in the city have sent their men to investigate, but they still haven't found out which organization had destroyed them. That's impossible. I don't believe it. Su Ruoyan cried out loudly as she swept her gloomy gaze across the group. She then ran away. She wants to go and take a look. She wants to go and take a look. She refused to believe that her years of painstaking effort would go up in flames just like that. Has that woman gone mad? The members of the poison sect aren't any good people. It's better if they're dead. What's she getting so worked up about? Don't worry about her, she's just a crazy woman. She's hurting my shoulder. The middle-aged man rubbed his shoulder as he spoke. He then continued, however, to be able to destroy an organization in one night, that's just too unbelievable. Say, do you think that the ghost doctor was behind this? When he reached the second half of his sentence, his voice carried a sense of cautiousness and he clearly lowered his voice. Why would you say that? Why would the ghost doctor destroy the poison sect for no reason at all? Aren't the ghost doctor and the poison sect archenemies? What's so strange about destroying the poison sect? Besides, if it wasn't the ghost doctor, who else would have the audacity to do such a thing? Only the ghost doctor would have the ability to destroy an entire family and an organization in one night, isn't that so? Hearing this, the others lowered their voices as well. So you're saying that the ghost doctor was behind the destruction of the Su family and the destruction of the poison sect? Let me tell you, it's best not to speak carelessly about this matter. Be careful that a loose tongue leads to disaster. After all, no one has seen anything, right? After hearing the words, trouble comes from careless talk, they looked at each other and stopped talking about this topic. Instead, they drank a few cups of tea and went home. When Su Ruoyan arrived at the mountain that had been burned to ashes, the spectators had already dispersed. Her eyes were red as she looked at the bare mountain. She was so angry that she spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. How is this possible? How is this possible? That she muttered to herself as if she had lost her soul. This was the place she had invested all her efforts into, the place she had planned to expand her influence. But now, it had been destroyed in a single night. The rolling blood and chi made her heart ache. She sat on the ground for a long time before she stood up. Her absent-minded eyes reignited with a sinister light, and her hands were tightly clenched into fists. I will never let you off. Absolutely not. Gritting her teeth, she resolutely turned around and left. If the poison sect was gone, then she would bring the Phoenix Guards over. The Phoenix Guards were the main force of the Feng Manor. They were a force that even the Emperor of the glorious Sun Country feared. As long as she took over the Phoenix Guards and became the Phoenix Master, not to mention the siblings, even destroying a middle-class family would be a piece of cake. Originally, she had wanted to wait a little longer. After all, the previous Feng Qingge had very little contact with the Phoenix Guards. The ones they had come into contact with were only 1 or 2 Phoenix Guards who had been transferred to protect them. As for the rest, they had not even seen them. Chapter 150. 2 days later. Fengjiu helped the old man walk around the courtyard and asked, "Grandfather, how do you feel? Are you feeling better?" "Hee, I'm much better. If Grandpa can drink a few mouthfuls of wine, Grandpa will probably be able to walk as fast as flying even without your help." The old man smiled and squinted his eyes. His spirit had returned after resting here for 2 days. However, he hadn't drunk for a few days. Once his body recovered, he really wanted to drink. "Not now. You can drink as much as you want in a few days." She helped him sit down at the stone table in the courtyard and poured him a cup of water. "Little Feng, when are we going home? It's not a good idea to live outside. Also, Su Ruoyun hasn't been dealt with yet. Your muddle-headed father is still being fooled." He shook his head and sighed. "Speaking of which, your father is quite pitiful. He doesn't know anything." She had already told him everything that had happened in the past few days. He was very lucky that she was still alive. He was also very lucky that he was able to meet her on the street and recognize her. However, he never thought that the vicious woman in the manor would be the docile Su Ruoyun who had always been by little Feng's side like a sister. It was impossible to know a person's heart. It was really impossible to judge a person's heart from their appearance. "Grandfather's body is better. We can go back at any time." She smiled and also felt that it was time to return to the Feng family. The old man was very happy when he heard this. He patted her hand and said 3 times, "Good, good, good." "Xiao Zhou." Guan Shilin quickly walked in from outside. He looked hurried. Seeing that the old man was also there, he called out, "Grandfather." Because of Fengjiu's relationship with him, the old man knew that he had asked to leave the clan. He also asked him to call him grandfather. He said that when he returned to the manor, he would ask him to become Feng Zhao's godfather. Seeing his anxious and worried expression, Fengjiu asked, "Brother, what's wrong?" "Grandfather, Xiao Zhou, quickly go back to the Feng family. Something happened in the Feng family." When the old man heard this, he hurriedly asked, "What happened?" "I just came back from outside. I heard that adoptive father was worried sick because of grandfather's disappearance. It seems that adoptive father wanted to hand over the Feng guards to Su Ruoyun to mobilize and have her do her best to find grandfather's whereabouts. Many people from various families in the city were invited over for the announcement ceremony at noon today. He wanted to tell everyone that the master of the Feng guards is his daughter. But the problem is that adoptive father doesn't know that the prefectural magistrate's Feng Qingge is a fake. If we hand the Phoenix guards over to her, we'll be in big trouble. Although he wasn't a member of the Feng family, he knew that the strength of the Feng guards was something that even the imperial family feared. If such a force were to be obtained by that venomous woman, wouldn't that be terrible? This Su Ruoyun. This ingrate. The old man scolded angrily, "Your father's body has always been as strong as an ox. How could he fall ill as soon as I went missing? It must be that ingrate who poisoned people again." Fengjiu's mouth twitched when he heard this. Strong as an ox. Her grandfather's analogy was too apparent, but grandfather, why is it that even the imperial family is afraid of our Feng guards? When I went to take you out that night, I felt that the strength of the Feng guards guarding the door wasn't that great. That's because you haven't come into contact with the elites of our Feng guards. Chapter 151. But I don't think I've ever seen our Feng family's Feng guard. In his memory, he had never seen the Feng family's Feng guard. However, there were some Feng guards in the manor that followed grandfather and father to protect them. You will definitely come into contact with the Feng family's guard in the future. Right now, we should return home first. Otherwise, once this matter spreads, I'm afraid it will get out of hand. The old man spoke in a calm voice. He looked at Guan Shilin and said, Shilin, quickly go prepare the carriage. There isn't much time left until noon. We need to quickly go back and stop it. Okay. Guan Shilin responded and immediately walked out. Ling Shuang came in with snacks in his hands and said, Old master, young miss, have some snacks. Qingyang just made these. Fengjiu smiled and said, Let's return to the Feng family. We'll bring the snacks and eat them in the carriage. She was not as worried about the Feng family's current situation as the old man. With just Su Ruian alone, she could not make any waves. And in the Feng family, because the news had spread, the family heads of the city had arrived one after another. They sat together and discussed in low voices. In their opinion, Feng Qingge was still too young. They feared that she would not be able to control the Feng guards and become the Feng master. However, who would have thought that so many things would happen in the Feng family during this period of time? Earlier, the head of the family had become insane. Then, he had been kidnapped and his whereabouts were unknown. In a short 2 days, even General Feng had fallen. Now, in the Feng manor, the only person who could take charge was Feng Qinggu. However, no one was optimistic about her strength. Although Feng Qingge was the apple of Feng Zhao's eye, compared to her strength and ability, her beauty was more interesting. After all, they were all people of Yunyu City. Naturally, they were clear about Feng Qingge's strength and cultivation. In truth, based on Feng Qingge's cultivation, she could not even compare to the children of some middle-class families, but she had a genius as her fiancé. She also had the powerful backing of the Feng manor. Thus, no one cared about how strong she was. Under a pavilion in the backyard, there were 8 men in embroidered robes. Some of them were sitting, some were standing, and some were leaning against the pavilion with their arms crossed. They were in the middle of a conversation. Do you think old master will come back today? The one who spoke was a young man in a blue robe. He was sitting at the table with one hand supporting his chin as he asked the others. A black-robed man with a serious expression took a sip of tea and said in a deep voice, The news has been released. He will definitely come back. There seems to be quite a lot of people here today. I heard from my subordinates that even the old emperor is here. Leaning against the pavilion, a man with his arms crossed in front of his chest said casually. A white-clothed man with a folding fan in his hand asked, however, Is it really okay for us to not report this matter? Isn't that too much? How could that be? The head of the family didn't ask us to investigate. We found out about it after investigating it ourselves. It's not like we didn't report it. The man who spoke raised his eyebrows. His tone was somewhat matter-of-fact. The other person couldn't help but laugh when he heard this. Fortunately, those old men went into seclusion. Otherwise, if they knew that we stood by and didn't solve the problem, they would probably be drilled again. Chapter 152. Hearing these words, they all fell silent. The 8 of them were none other than the captains of the 8 elite teams of the Phoenix Guards. For them, who had been training in isolation, if it were not for the Phoenix Guards reporting to them, they would have no way of knowing what had happened in the Feng manor. But ever since they found out what had happened in the Feng manor, they began to investigate. In particular, they found out that old Master Feng had become insane and had been kidnapped. But they never thought that the person that the family head and the guards could not find had been taken away by a young girl to recuperate in a courtyard. They tried to get closer to observe, but as soon as they got close, they were noticed. They did not know if the young girl was too sharp or if their ability to hide their presence was too weak. Originally, they wanted to bring the old man back, but when they saw the old man talking and laughing with the young girl, and the young girl helping the old man walk around the courtyard every day, they gave up on the idea. The old man didn't look like someone who had gone mad at all. Although they did not know who the young girl was, her concern could not be faked. Since she did not have any ill intentions towards the old man, they did not care. Hey, that young girl's face has been disfigured to that extent, but why does it seem like she doesn't care? The blue-clothed man asked curiously. When he had first seen that disfigured face, he had been given a fright. After all, that was a young girl, yet her face had been disfigured to the point of being unrecognizable. Even he felt pity for her. That young girl does not have any aura of Xian-Qi. She is probably just a normal person. But that Guan Shilin has a steady aura. He is quite a character, the black-clothed man said in a deep voice. Pausing, he looked away and said, "You have all seen the family head's daughter today, right? What do you all think?" "Nothing much. She really is not qualified to be the master of the Phoenix Guards. Her strength is indeed not outstanding, but her appearance is quite outstanding. Looking at such a gentle and graceful woman, we want her to be the master of the Phoenix Guards. TSK, I really don't want to." "Ah." "The first time I saw her, I felt very disappointed." "I don't think so either. She can't control us. There's nothing we can do about it. After all, the patriarch only has one daughter." After hearing their words, the black-robed man stood up and said, "No, she's not simple." What do you mean?" The seven of them asked at the same time, somewhat surprised that he would say such a thing. That Feng Qinga, they didn't see anything special about her. Intuition. Qi. The others sneered, "I don't feel anything at all." Turning their gazes, they all looked in a certain direction. One of them smiled and said, "Everyone says not to talk about people during the day and not to talk about ghosts at night. Look, as soon as we said that, people came." Not far away, a figure in a colorful dress was walking over, followed by two maidservants. When she saw the few young men with outstanding appearances who were either standing or sitting in the pavilion, a light flashed across her eyes. These 8 people were the 8 team captains of the Phoenix Guards Elite Division. Their strength had already reached the peak of the martial master realm. After all, the old man had only been a martial arts grandmaster at stage 8 of the initial stage of the Black Realm. Even Feng Xiao had only entered the martial arts grandmaster realm a few years ago. Now, he was only a stage 2 of the initial stage of the Black Realm. Chapter 153. The man in blue saw that she was standing outside the pavilion and looking at them without saying a word. He could not help but raise his eyebrows and asked, "Is something the matter, eldest young lady?" Su Ruoyan returned to her senses and her gaze swept across the faces of the 8 people. She asked in a gentle voice, "What are your names?" "Names?" He smiled as he walked over and leaned against the pillar of the pavilion. "The old men above us have instructed us that we can only speak of our names to our master. So, before eldest young lady becomes our master, we don't mind if eldest young lady places numbers on us and ranks us to become famous." A man walked up from behind with his arms crossed over his chest. He glanced at the people beside him, then looked at the people outside the pavilion. With a somewhat sloppy look on his face, he said, "She's not our master yet. She can't order us around, and even if she ranks us to become famous, she can't mobilize us. Eldest young lady, although we're Phoenix Guards, we haven't recognized a master yet. Whether or not you can make us recognize you as our master will depend on your ability." Another person walked up and spoke in a very rude tone. After all, although they were Phoenix Guards, there was no need for them to be polite to someone who was not their master. Hearing this, Su Ruoyan was not angry. She smiled and looked at them. Her voice was filled with confidence as she said, "You will serve me." Once she finished speaking, she turned and walked towards the front courtyard. From her point of view, the real Feng Qinga was already dead. It was only a matter of time before the Phoenix Guards fell into her hands. She did not believe that with her ability, she would not be able to make them serve her. When she walked closer, a man in black robes walked up and glanced at the two people next to him. Don't go too far. She's the master's daughter after all. She's the master will be loyal to. Pfft. How do you know that she has the ability to make us willingly call her master? The sloppy man spoke disapprovingly. It was obvious that he did not place her in his eyes. But don't forget what the old men have been telling us all this time. Hearing this, the few of them fell silent and no one said anything else. After a while, the man in black robes said, "It's about time. Let's go to the front and take a look." "That's good too." The few of them replied and headed to the front yard together. At this time, in the direction of the Foam Manor, because of the Emperor's departure, it attracted the attention of the citizens on the streets. They all watched in amazement as the grand procession headed towards the Foam Manor. In the imperial carriage, the monarch, wearing a bright yellow dragon robe, sat in a dignified manner. To his side, Murong Yixian, wearing a purple robe and filled with a noble aura, followed on a horse. When the family heads of the Foam Manor heard that even the country lord had come, they were a little surprised. The matter of the Foam Manor announcing Foam Qinggu as the Phoenix Master normally did not require the Emperor to personally come, however, he had come today. The meaning behind this was quite thought-provoking. Even so, the crowd still came out to greet him. After all, he was the monarch of the glorious Sun Kingdom and a powerful expert. Naturally, they did not dare to show any disrespect. As the current person in charge of the Foam Manor, Su Ruoyun walked out from the crowd and saluted towards the imperial carriage. This official's daughter, Foam Qinggu, respectfully welcomes the Emperor's arrival. We respectfully welcome the monarch. All the family heads said in unison and bowed slightly. A low voice came from the imperial carriage. The monarch, wearing a bright yellow dragon robe, walked down from the carriage. His sharp eyes contained a dignified aura as they swept over the crowd. Only then did he walk inside. Chapter 154. Weren't most of the people here? Why were there still people here? Everyone was puzzled. Their footsteps paused as they looked at the inconspicuous carriage parked in front of the gate. Murong Yixian, who was about to enter, also stopped when he saw the carriage. Not only did he find the carriage familiar, he also felt that the woman in black driving it was familiar. She seemed to be the person beside the lady last time. Xiao Zhou, "I'll help you," Guan Shilin, dressed in black, jumped up from the carriage and reached out to help the person coming out from behind. That Xiao Zhou made Murong Yixian's heart skip a beat. A trace of surprise appeared in his eyes. He couldn't move and just stared at the person coming out of the carriage. At this time, Su Ruoyun didn't see the person coming out of the carriage. Because the lord had entered the manor, she went to the front to receive him. Thus, not only did she not see Guan Shilin and Fingzhou, she didn't even see the person coming out of the carriage. Otherwise, she would have been scared pale. Hiss. Isn't that old Master Foam? When all the family heads saw the man and woman helping the old man out of the carriage, they finally saw that the old man was the missing old master of the Foam Manor. Also, looking at his expression, how did he look like someone who had gone mad? Immediately, everyone gathered around him. "Old Master Foam, you're finally back." "Old Master Foam, General Foam fell ill from worry when you weren't in the manor." "Old Master Foam, where did you go during this time?" Everyone asked at once, their words filled with concern. Because only the large families in Yunyu City came today, there wasn't a single person from a mid-level family. Thus, everyone was completely unfamiliar with Guan Shilin and Fingzhou. No one recognized them. Hee, I've made everyone worry. "This old man is fine," the old master said with a smile and nodded to everyone. Grandfather Foam, Murong Yixian walked over. Seeing that he had recovered well, he couldn't help but feel puzzled. Why was he with Guan Xilin and Guan Xilin? He turned to look at Feng Zhou with an inquisitive gaze. Old Master Feng saw him and said kindly, "So it's Yi Xian. You're here today." This old man heard that the monarch is also here. Seeing that he was looking at his phone lass, the smile on his face deepened. No matter how one looked at it, these two people were a very compatible couple. Unfortunately, Feng girl's face, when the Feng Manor's guards saw that it was the old master coming out of the carriage, they quickly ran inside and shouted, "It's the old master. Master's master. Master master master's master. Grandfather, let's go in." T.S. Yi Xian's the old of Guan Xilin SS Guan Xilin to the right behind her, T.S. "What did you say?" Su Ruoyun, who was sitting in the main seat, heard the guard's words and her face turned pale. Her body trembled uncontrollably. "Who did you say came back?" "Who?" "It's the old master, the old master's back," the guard said in surprise. The lord, who was sitting and drinking tea, noticed that something was wrong with her. He raised an eyebrow, a little surprised by her panicked reaction. Chapter 155. The old master has returned. Where is he? Hearing the voice, the monarch looked in the direction of the voice. Once he saw who it was, shock appeared on his face. It had only been a few days, but this Feng Xiao had actually become this weak. He couldn't even walk, and he still needed someone to support him. "Master, you should sit here for now. The old master is at the door and will come in a moment." A man wearing white clothes and holding a folding fan gently said. After supporting him to sit down, he looked outside the courtyard. The monarch, Murong Bo, looked at the outstanding men standing next to Feng Xiao. Deep thought flashed through his sharp black eyes. After discreetly sizing them up, he looked away. When Su Ruoyun saw the Feng guards next to Feng Xiao, she gritted her teeth. Not only did these people not put her in their eyes, but they also took Feng Xiao out without permission. They really deserved to die. Originally, she had only planned to let Feng Xiao come out for a while before returning to prevent others from noticing, but now, at this time, Feng Zhou walked in with the old master, followed by a group of people. When she saw Feng Zhou next to the old master, Su Ruoyun sucked in a cold breath. "How could it be you? How could you be here?" This woman. She had not forgotten that her poison had been ruined because of her. This woman's origins were mysterious and strange. Now, she actually dared to appear in the Feng Manor in front of her. Did she really think that she would not do anything to her? "Guards! Take her away!" She loudly shouted and immediately ordered the guards to take Feng Zhou away. However, no one dared to do so because they did not dare. Even an idiot could see that the veiled girl was supporting their old master. "Go forward and take her away." It was not like they were tired of living. Feng Zhou did not say anything. He only looked at her with a faint smile. When old Master Feng saw this, he snorted heavily and shouted, "Where are the Phoenix Guards?" The 8 young noble-like men standing beside Feng Xiao took a step forward at the same time. Their steps were steady and imposing. They lined up side by side and cupped their hands in salute in unison. Their sonorous and powerful voices that contained a strong profound energy aura were respectfully transmitted out. "Greetings, old master." It was just a few words, but it shook the hearts of everyone present. After the 8 of them bowed, they stood up straight. The sloppiness that originally appeared on their bodies were all gone at this moment. His solemn face contained a fierce and breathtaking murderous aura. The aura on his body was strong and fierce, like an iron-blooded warrior that had walked out from the battlefield. His uniform steps and his tall and straight heroic figure caused the eyes of others to light up in shock in their hearts. These were the Phoenix Guards. It was the elite division that struck terror into the hearts of the neighboring armies. That troop was made up of such iron-blooded tough men, all of them outstanding young men. "Take her away for me." Old Master Feng pointed his finger at the deathly pale Su Ruoyun. If his sharp and resentful gaze could kill, she would have died no less than 100 times. Father. Su Ruoyun recovered from her shock. Her first reaction was to seek Feng Zhao's protection because only Feng Zhao could protect her old master. However, she was destined to be disappointed. Because Feng Zhao was currently looking in astonishment at the elegant girl wearing a white dress and a veil, who was supporting the old master. A thought surfaced in his mind and he spoke with a trembling voice. Chapter 156. After the 8 people responded in unison, 2 of them stepped forward, grabbed Su Ruoyun's hands and brought her in front of the old master. Everyone was first shocked that the old master had ordered the Feng guards to capture his granddaughter, then they were puzzled by Feng Zhao's current reaction. Thus, their probing gazes fell upon the white-clothed woman, trying to guess her identity. Muro Nixian looked at Feng Qingge, who had her hands clasped behind her back as she was brought before the old master, and couldn't help but frown. He was about to speak, but when he heard Feng Zhao's question, his gaze fell upon the white-robed woman. He also wanted to know who she was. Feng Zhou looked at the emotional Feng Zhao, whose eyes were slightly red. He sighed in his heart and said, "You've already guessed it, haven't you?" He wasn't an idiot. So many things had happened in the Feng manor recently. In addition, the old master had returned and even she had appeared. If he still hadn't reacted by now, then he wouldn't be the famous great general Feng Zhao. "You're my daughter Qing Gu." His voice was choked with sobs. He reached out and held Feng Zhou's hand. I'm sorry. Father didn't know that the person beside him was fake. Thinking of the old master's words that day and his anger at that time, then looking at her veiled face, his heart ached and he couldn't help but burst into tears. "I'm sorry. It's father's fault that an awe-inspiring great general was actually crying like a child." His appearance of tears falling like rain made everyone who saw him feel astonished and shocked. What did he just say? The woman with the veil was his daughter Qing Gu. Then who was the person being held captive? "Uncle Xiao, who did you say she was?" Muro Yixian's voice trembled uncontrollably. He stared blankly at the white-clothed woman with the veil. He found it hard to believe, but also felt excitement and joy. His heart thumped wildly. That kind of feeling was indescribable. Woo-woo. My daughter. My daughter. Feng Zhao cried out of guilt, but because his body was weak, he couldn't bear such an impact. He cried and cried until he fainted. "You two, send my father back to his room," Feng Zhou ordered in a deep voice as he looked at the Phoenix guards who were staring at him with wide eyes. "Yes." After the almost instinctive response, the few people were suddenly startled. They looked at each other and felt that it was a little strange. However, 2 people still walked out and sent Feng Zhao back. At this time, old Master Feng's aged but vigorous voice that contained profound energy rang out, "In front of everyone here, this old man will tell everyone about this matter." He paused and pointed at Su Ruoyun. "She's not my granddaughter, Feng Qingge. She's just an orphan that my granddaughter picked up from the streets when she was young, Su Ruoyun. My granddaughter treated her like a sister, but she schemed against my granddaughter and wanted to murder her. She took my granddaughter's identity and stole everything from her. And this, after being discovered by this old man, used poison to harm this old man. This woman is vicious and sinister. She's heartless and unjust." After hearing this, everyone went into an uproar. They all sucked in a breath of cold air, feeling that this matter was too inconceivable and too terrifying. She even took someone else's identity. If no one found out, then wouldn't this large Feng manor have fallen into her hands in the end? Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. Chapter 157. At this moment, there was no way to reverse the situation. She naturally did not need to hide anything. At this moment, she finally understood why she felt that she was an eyesore when she met her on the streets. She also finally understood why the people she sent to kill her not only failed, but also destroyed the power she had painstakingly cultivated. So it was her. So she had not died this entire time. She was very clear on how much weight Feng Qingge had. With her abilities, it was impossible for her to destroy her poison sect in one night, and it was even more impossible for her to come to the Feng Manor and rescue the old man. The only thing she could be certain of was that there was someone behind her. Why don't you take off your veil? Aren't you Feng Qingge? Take off your veil. She looked at Fengzhou provocatively, her eyes filled with madness and viciousness. Let everyone see if the face under your veil is really Feng Qingge or not. Fengzhou looked at her, his eyes filled with a cold light. He did not pay attention to her words and instead said to the old man, "Grandfather, your body has just recovered. You cannot receive too much shock. You should return to your courtyard first. Leave this place to me to handle." Feng girl. The old man was a little worried, fearing that she would not be able to handle it. "It's fine. I can handle it here." She gently smiled, indicating that he did not need to worry. She then called the housekeeper and had him support the old man back. When everyone saw this, they were curious. What did she want to do? She actually could not allow the old man to be present. Murong Yixian looked at her, his heart feeling very complicated. He could not find a chance to speak. Lord Murongbo had been completely overlooked by everyone today. There was nothing that could be done. Who told everyone to focus on the real and fake Feng Qingge? You too, bring her out of the Feng Manor's main gates. Fengzhou's gaze swept past the two Feng guards holding Su Ruoyun. He then turned around and walked out. Seeing this, the two of them looked at each other and followed after him. In front of the Feng Manor's main gate, Fengzhou sat in a chair that a guard had brought over. Surrounding him were the various family heads who had come to watch, as well as the guards that had been waiting outside. Even the Murongbo was curious and came over. He sat in the chair that had been brought over and looked at the graceful and calm Fengzhou with interest. "Aren't you tired of wearing my face for so long?" She rested her chin on one hand and sat with her legs crossed. It was obviously not a very elegant movement, but it felt casual and natural. "I've been sick of it for a long time. I feel disgusted every day when I look at this face," Su Ruoyun said gloomily. Her tone was filled with disgust as she struggled, "Let me go." The two Phoenix guards were holding her down, so naturally, she couldn't break free. "Let her go. She can't run." Fengzhou gestured for the two to let her go. Once she was free, Su Ruoyun tore off the mask on her face and threw it on the ground, revealing her original face, a delicate and pretty beauty. Unfortunately, although her face was delicate and pretty, her heart was like a snake. One of the family heads who was watching exclaimed in surprise, "What a brilliant disguise. That mask is connected to the neck and behind the ears. No wonder others couldn't see it." Murong Yixian looked at Su Ruoyun in shock. He never thought that it would really be her. Perhaps it was because she felt Murong Yixian's gaze, but this was the first time Su Ruoyun felt ashamed and embarrassed. She didn't even dare to look at him, afraid that she would see a gaze that she couldn't bear. Chapter 158. Tell me, how should I repay you? Humph. A person with no profound energy aura and a disfigured face. So what if you're still alive? You might as well die. She shouted coldly and gloatingly as she looked at her veiled face, her eyes filled with malice as she looked at Murong Yixian. You still don't know, right? Her tendons and veins were crippled by my poison. Her face was also disfigured by me. That bloody face of hers was even more terrifying than a female yiksha. Furthermore, ha 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 ha. She laughed strangely and her eyes were filled with madness. Moreover, I had sold her to a brothel and who knows how many men toyed with her. Ah! Before she could finish her sentence, a blood-curdling scream rang out. It turned out that Fingzhou, who was originally sitting, had pulled out the long sword at Ling Shuang's waist. With a few strides, he arrived in front of her and with a shake of the sword, he cut off her tongue. Nothing good comes out of a dog's mouth. I don't care about the tongue. Everyone secretly sucked in a breath. Because of what Su Ruoyun had said and also because of Fingzhou's sudden attack, they didn't even notice how she had done it. They only saw a bloody tongue fall to the ground and Su Ruoyun covered her mouth as blood flowed endlessly. When the 8 Phoenix Guards saw this scene, their eyes lit up. They watched as she stood with the long sword in her hand pointing diagonally at the ground. The tip of the sword was dripping with blood and her white clothes fluttered in the wind. The cold and languid aura on her body was pleasing to their eyes. Especially her straightforward attack, it made them extremely excited. They couldn't help but admit that even if her face was disfigured, her aura wasn't something an ordinary person could compare to. If this kind of person was their master, it wasn't that they couldn't accept it. Muro Nishien's eyes widened in shock as he looked at the ruthless woman in white. He was shocked. She was really Chinga. Was she really that gentle and soft woman who would snuggle up to him? Ah! Without her tongue, Su Ruoyun's mouth was overflowing with blood. She couldn't even speak clearly and could only let out shrill cries. She pounced on Fingzhou as if she had gone mad. But before she could get close, she saw Fingzhou's eyes narrowed, and a strange look appeared in her eyes. In the next moment, she saw Fingzhou's sword coming at her. Fingzhou felt sword chi brush past her, and then there was the sound of clothes tearing. Ah! Ah! That she screamed. Her clothes were torn to shreds and scattered all over the floor. Her entire body turned cold. She hugged her body tightly with both hands, trying to cover her exposed body. Hearing the sounds of gasping and slightly rough breathing, she was so embarrassed that she wanted to find a hole to hide in. The surrounding patriarchs were all middle-aged. Although they had virtuous wives and beautiful concubines at home, when they saw such a naked female body in front of them, although they knew that they shouldn't look at it with their status, they still couldn't shift their gazes away. He coughed uncomfortably as his old face turned slightly red. However, he still glanced at that snow-white body. At this moment, he finally understood why Feng Qinga had asked her grandfather to return to the courtyard first. It was because she had prepared such an erotic and exciting scene for them to see. It had to be said that this move of hers was indeed ruthless. Killing someone was just a matter of nodding her head to the ground. But she clearly knew how to torture people, and the best way to torture people was obviously to torture their hearts. She played this move extremely beautifully. Compared to directly killing Su Ruoyun, it made her wish she was dead. Chapter 159. Fingzhou turned the long sword in her hand and held it in a reverse grip. She stood in front of her and looked at the pale-faced and trembling Su Ruoyun. She lazily asked, "Aren't you shameless? I think it would be better if you didn't wear it, right?" Seeing this scene, the sloppy man among the 8 Phoenix Guards couldn't help but gulp. His eyes lit up and he praised, "TSK. Eldest young Miss Move is too beautiful. What a benefit. TSK, that figure really isn't your average material. Her skin is also quite white and tender. It would be a pity to just kill her." Hearing this, Fingzhou couldn't help but laugh. She glanced at the man. "You like her? How about I give her to you?" Hearing this, the man was shocked and waved his hand. "No need, no need. I want to preserve my chastity for my future wife." Muro Nishian glanced at the trembling Su Ruoyun curled up on the ground and looked at Fingzhou with some reluctance. "Qinggu, that's enough." Fingzhou turned and her clear eyes were full of smiles. "Enough? I still haven't done anything to her yet. How could it be enough?" As she spoke, she turned the sharp sword in her hand and attacked the curled-up Su Ruoyun, leaving a bloody mark on her body. Ah. Chingu. Shut up. She coldly shouted and looked at him with cold eyes. This is my phone manners matter. I hope that third prince won't interfere. As soon as she spoke, the sharp sword in her hand stabbed towards her thigh. With a whoosh, a blood-curdling scream was heard and fresh blood splattered onto the ground. This is all for you. These were all things that she wanted to get back for Feng Qingge. She promised that she would make her pay back double. After hearing Murong Yixian's words, the curled-up Su Ruoyun's eyes moved slightly. She pulled out a smile that was uglier than crying. She lowered her head and her hand reached into her hair. A vicious look appeared in her eyes. Ah! She endured the pain in her thigh and suddenly stood up and threw herself at Fengzhou. The dark purple hairpin in her hand fiercely stabbed towards Fengzhou, as if she had the idea of dying together with her. Be careful. Murong Yixian suddenly regained his senses and stood in front of Fengzhou to protect her. At the same time, he instinctively swung out a palm and sent her flying. Pooh! Bang! Su Ruoyun spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground in a sorry state. She looked at Murong Yishuan with her dying breath and there was a smile of relief in her eyes. Because of this man, she ended up in a terrible state, but he never cared about her. She raised her hand and under his astonished gaze, she slapped the top of her head. With a bang, her pitiful life ended. Fengzhou glanced at Murong Yixian who was standing behind him, then turned to look at the 8 phoenix guards and said, "Dispose of her body." It was really too easy for her. She didn't even have enough fun before she died. Only then did she look at the various patriarchs, as well as the monarch, Murong Bo, who was sitting and watching the show. She raised her voice and said, "I have neglected everyone today. I hope that everyone will not take offense. When my father recovers, I will definitely invite everyone to a banquet to apologize to everyone." Hee, young Miss Feng's words are too serious. Today, something like this happened in the Feng Manor and we all know about it. So, there is no need to neglect. That's right. Young Miss Feng, since the poison woman has been punished, then quickly go in and see your father. We will take our leave first. We will visit again another day. As everyone spoke, they all cupped their hands and bid farewell to her and left one after another. Chapter 160. Just as he was about to follow, he saw Ling Shuang block his way. Third Prince, there are still many things to take care of in the Feng Manor today. It's inconvenient to greet you. Please go back as well. After glancing at him, Ling Shuang followed behind Fengzhou and walked inside, completely ignoring the frozen Murong Yixian. On the other hand, the 8 phoenix guards to the side watched with interest. Based on what they knew, Murong Yixian was their eldest young Miss fiancé. However, looking at the situation, he would not be for long. You guys, come here and take care of this corpse. A phoenix guard called over a few guards and had them take care of the scene. He then walked inside with large strides. Yi Xian. Murong Bo, who had already sat in the imperial carriage, called out, "Father Emperor." He arrived in front of him and slightly narrowed his eyes as he called out, "Come back to the palace with me. I have something to say to you." Murong Bo looked at his most outstanding son and knew that in the future, his cultivation would definitely be higher than his. Because of this, he had looked forward to him the most since he was young. Yes. Murong Yixian replied and mounted his horse. He glanced at the Feng Manor before leaving with them. Inside the Feng Manor the old man, Fengzhou, and Guan Shilin were all in Feng Zhao's room. At this time, the middle-aged doctor, after taking his pulse, shook his head and sighed, "Master, eldest young miss, the master's body has suffered too much damage. My skills are lacking and I am powerless." The old man heard this and furrowed his brow. His face was dark, but the worry in his eyes could not be hidden. You can leave first. Fengzhou gestured for the doctor to leave first. Yes. The middle-aged doctor sighed. He bowed and walked out. Grandfather, don't worry. Father will be fine. She came to the old man's side and comforted him. She then sat down on the bed and took his pulse. Phone girl, Yuda. When the old man saw her skillful pulse-feeling gesture, he couldn't help but be slightly stunned. Thinking that she had been investigating his body these days, the doubts in his heart couldn't help but emerge again. After taking his pulse, she took out the silver needles and spread them out. Then, she looked at the old man and revealed a smile. Grandfather should have heard of the ghost doctor, right? I've heard of him. It's said that he can even save someone who's on the verge of death. His voice paused, as if he had thought of something, and his eyes widened in shock. Little Feng, you mean? Yes, it's just as Grandpa thought. She winked at him. It's a secret. The old man widened his eyes in shock. He was surprised and happy at the same time. He found it unbelievable. Ghost doctor. His granddaughter was the ghost doctor. What was going on? Is this true? Shilin, is what she said true? Grandfather Guan came to Guan Shilin's side, grabbed his arm and asked excitedly. Hee, Grandpa, it's true. Come, let me help you to sit over there. I'll tell you what happened. Guan Shilin grinned and helped the old man to sit down at the table in the outer room. He told him everything. In the inner room, Fengzhou began to treat her father with silver needles. After about half an hour, he put away his things and walked out. As soon as he came out, he saw the old man staring at him with shining eyes. That gaze was like staring at a glowing treasure, making her hair stand on end. Grandpa, are you okay? Little Phone girl, you've been hiding it from Grandpa for so long. Chapter 161. The old man adjusted his expression and said sternly, Don't worry, I will keep it a secret. He knew very well what kind of commotion it would cause if her identity as the ghost doctor was leaked. Now, to the people outside, most people guessed that the ghost doctor was from another country. If they knew that the ghost doctor was the eldest daughter of the Feng family, then the crisis would naturally follow. Yu and Yishuan. Although he was old, he was not muddle-headed. Naturally, he could see that she was indifferent to Yishuan after returning this time. This girl used to be very clingy to him, but now, sigh. Hearing this, her eyes flashed and said, Find a time to cancel this engagement. Cancel it? Are you serious? The old man was slightly stunned. That child, Yishuan, may be a prince, but we have watched him grow up. No matter how you look at it, there is no one in Yari country who can compare to him. Are you really going to cancel this engagement? Yes, cancel it. She said again, her tone very firm. Hearing this, the old man was helpless. He did not want to force her, so he said, Since you insist on canceling it, then I will go to the palace another day to discuss it with the country. Okay. She nodded in response. At this time, Ling Shuang, who was guarding outside the door, said, Master, the 8 Phoenix guards are waiting outside the courtyard. They say that they want to see the old master and you. The people in the room looked at each other, then walked out. When the door opened, they saw that the 8 people in the courtyard were either sitting or standing. They quickly lined up in a row and bowed respectfully. Greetings, old master, eldest daughter. What is it? The old man asked, his gaze sweeping over the 8 people. We want to ask, old master, what arrangements do you have for us? Do you want us to stay or go back first? A man in a black robe asked, looking at the old man. The old man looked at Fengzhou, paused, then said to them, You can stay for now. Yes, they answered and looked at Fengzhou. They didn't hide the fact that they were trying to figure her out. Fengzhou glanced at them, then turned to the old man and said, Grandpa, I'm going to talk to the housekeeper about something. Dad will be fine with my brother here. You should go back and rest first. All right, go ahead. As the old man spoke, he suddenly thought of something and hurriedly called out to her, "Feng lass, wait." After taking 2 steps, Feng Jiu turned around to look at him. He saw him take out a token and hand it over. This is the Phoenix badge. Seeing the badge is the same as seeing the master. Not only can it mobilize the Phoenix guards, but it can also order the Feng family's guards. This Phoenix badge will be given to you in the future. Use it well. Seeing this scene, the 8 people all had different expressions. They didn't think that the old man would just hand over the Feng badge like this. Was he at ease handing over the entire Feng family to the eldest young miss? Feng Jiu was also a little surprised and asked, "Why is this thing with Grandpa? Isn't it with Father?" "Hee, your father's is a grandson. Grandpa's is an old man. This is more useful." The old man stroked his beard and said proudly. Hearing this, Feng Jiu's mouth twitched. With this thing in hand, Grandpa is still worried that the Phoenix guards will fall into Su Ruian's hands. A grandson is also a treasure. Of course, it can't fall into the hands of an outsider. Moreover, the badge can mobilize the Phoenix guards, but more importantly, the Phoenix guards recognize the master. He looked at the 8 people meaningfully, and a wise smile appeared in his eyes. Chapter 162. Feng Jiu couldn't help but smile, and her gaze swept past the 8 people before she said, "I'll take the command tokens. As for them, I'll deal with them when I'm free." As soon as she finished speaking, she walked towards the exit. After returning to Feng Manor, she began to clean up the people left behind by Su Ruoyun. In a short 3 days, she reorganized the manor from top to bottom. In these 3 days, Feng Zhao's body gradually recovered. Early in the morning, Feng Jiu was practicing Tai Chi in the courtyard when she saw Ling Shuang walk in. "Master, third prince is here. He said he wants to see you. Old master wants you to go over." She retracted her hand and exhaled softly, saying, "Got it. I'll change my clothes and go out." As she spoke, she walked towards the room. Her footsteps paused and she asked, "Oh right, how is my brother doing in the black market?" "Young master is doing well. Don't worry, master. The black market has already been informed." That's good." She nodded and went into the room to change her clothes. Then, she walked out with Ling Shuang to the front hall. In the front hall, Yi Xian. "This old man knows that you are very outstanding, and this old man is also very satisfied with you. However, since Feng Girl has already said so, as a grandfather, I naturally can't say much. So, I'll tell you first today that I will enter the palace another day and report the situation to the monarch to annul this marriage." Hearing this, Murong Yi Xian looked at him and said, "Grandfather Feng, don't enter the palace first. Wait until I've talked to Qinggu first." That day, it was he who annulled this marriage. Now, it was she who wanted to annul this marriage. Was it because he didn't recognize her and was angry at him? "Grandfather." A voice came from outside. Murong Yi Xian turned to look. With this look, his eyes narrowed. A woman in white walked in with her back to the light. Her elegant figure and elegant aura made her look as beautiful as a fairy. However, when he saw her face, the previous beauty disappeared without a trace. It was a face full of scars. Her original appearance could no longer be seen. The skin on her face was almost completely destroyed. It was very terrifying. Even if he saw it, his heart couldn't help but shrink. There was pain, pity, and also shock and astonishment. He never knew that her face was so thoroughly destroyed. "Phone girl, you're here." When the old man saw her, his eyes narrowed and he smiled. He stood up and looked at Murong Yi Xian and said, "You two have a good talk." Then, he walked out. Chinga, let's get married. He looked at her and stated his purpose for coming. Hearing this, Fingjo, didn't tell you that I wanted to annul the marriage. She walked to the main seat and sat, the servants to serve her tea to her, twos to test to twos. He thought that she wanted to break off the engagement because her face was disfigured. After all, she used to rely on him so much. How could she break off that kind of relationship just like that? Hearing this, Fingjo smiled. I think you're mistaken. I don't want to annul the marriage because my face is ruined. It's because I realized that I don't love you, so I want to annul the marriage. Her voice was indifferent. Her expression was languid and elegant. She didn't feel a trace of uneasiness and inferiority because her face was ruined in front of him. I don't believe you. His gaze was fixed on her. I don't believe that you don't love me. We've been together for so many years. How can you say you don't love me? Chapter 163. That's different. He looked at her with deep affection. Because that's Su Ruin, not you. Pfft. She sneered and curled her lips. Which man doesn't love beauty? Don't tell me you weren't stunned when you saw me in the peach blossom forest. Weren't you surprised when you saw me on the street? If a man's words can be trusted, even a pig can climb a tree. Chinga. She drank a mouthful of tea and stood up. She walked in front of him and said, I'm definitely canceling this marriage. I'm not discussing it with you. I'm just informing you so that you can be mentally prepared. Then, she called out, Butler, see the guest out. The butler outside walked in and said to Murong Yishuan, Third Prince, please. Murong Yishuan was silent. After looking deeply at her, he said, I will find medicine to remove the scar for you. I will let you know that my feelings for you have never changed. Once he finished speaking, he then walked out. Fengzhou shook his head and sighed softly in his heart. Unfortunately, the Feng Chinga who loved you is already dead. No matter how much you do, it's useless. Then, she walked out of the front hall and went to the backyard. When she arrived at Feng Zhao's courtyard, she saw the old man and her father drinking tea and chatting. She called out, Grandfather, father. Chinga, I heard that Yishuan came. How did the two of you talk? Feng Zhao asked with concern. When he saw his daughter's disfigured face, his heart ached. His daughter's face was disfigured just like that. This was all because of his negligence as a father. He didn't protect her well and let her suffer so much. He's already gone. Grandfather, find a time to talk to the king and cancel this marriage. She walked to the table and sat down. Then, she looked at Feng Zhao. Father, do you still feel unwell? No, I'm fine. My body is recovering quickly. Feng Zhao smiled and told her not to worry. Well, you still have to continue drinking the medicine. She smiled and chatted with them in the courtyard. After a while, she returned to the courtyard. Not long after they returned to the courtyard, Ling Shuang walked in. Master. Just as he was about to speak, Ling Shuang saw a blue-robed man wandering around outside the courtyard. The words that were about to come out of his mouth suddenly stopped. Fingzhou, who was in the courtyard, followed her gaze and saw the blue-robed man sticking his head out and looking around. Seeing this, she raised her eyebrows and asked, What are you doing there? I had nothing better to do so I decided to take a stroll. He grinned as he stared at her naked face, feeling a little surprised. He had heard that eldest miss had removed her veil after she returned, revealing her disfigured face. She had been wandering around the residence all day long. He didn't believe it at first, but he didn't expect it to be true. Do you have nothing to do? She curled her lips and looked at him with a faint smile. Speaking of which, you haven't recognized me as your master yet. Young Miss wants us to acknowledge you as our master. This is probably going to be a little difficult. His words were very straightforward and blunt. Master. Ling Shuang leaned close to her ear and whispered a few words. Then, he stepped back. After hearing Ling Shuang's words, Fengzhou's eyes flashed with a faint light. Her gaze fell on the blue-robed man and she said to Ling Shuang, "Yes, go back and say that I agree." "Yes." Ling Shuang responded and left. Chapter 164. Ah! He was caught off guard by her fist and was hit in the eye. He cried out in pain and quickly retreated while covering his eye with one hand. "Eldest miss, why are you hitting people?" Fengzhou smiled evilly. "Don't you solve problems with your fists. Since you've delivered yourself to my door and I'm itching for a fight, I'll use you as practice." As soon as she finished speaking, her figure flashed and rushed forward again. When he saw this, the blue-robed man let go and said, "Since it's like that, then eldest young miss, don't blame me for being merciless." This time, he didn't dodge, and he moved forward to greet her while swinging his fist fiercely towards her. However, he did not expect that his hand would be caught by her and the other hand would exchange blows with her. The sound of two fists colliding could be heard, accompanied by his cries of pain from time to time. He was not paying attention and felt that his whole body was suddenly lifted up and fiercely thrown to the ground. Bang! An! The sound of a heavy fall was accompanied by his muffled groan. His whole body was pressed to the ground and he did not know where his hand was pinched by her. It was weak and powerless. Before he could catch his breath, he saw a fist coming towards him. He was so shocked that he shouted, "Don't hit my face." Bang 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 bang. Ah! Why do you keep hitting my face? Don't hit my face. Don't hit my face. Ah! The guards who heard the commotion thought that something had happened and quickly came over to take a look. Who knew that it was the Phoenix Guard who was being fiercely beaten up by the eldest Mississippi? For a moment, all of them widened their eyes in disbelief. How could the eldest miss beat the Phoenix Guard? Did the Phoenix Guard let her win? My stomach. Ah! Don't hit me, master, don't hit me, I admit defeat. As soon as he finished speaking, he saw that she had finally lifted her knee that was pressing against his stomach. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief and his whole body relaxed. However, just as he let out a sigh of relief and was unprepared, a fist fiercely landed on his stomach, causing his whole body to curl up like a cooked shrimp. He held his breath and his face turned red. "I, already, called, master. Why, still, hit me." Fengzhou stood up, brushed his clothes, and smiled at the man who was curled up on the ground with a swollen face. "This last punch was taught to you by master. Before the danger is over, don't let your guard down. Only when you know the pain will you remember this lesson." Looking at the figure who clapped her hands and walked into the room, he hissed. He gritted his teeth and endured the pain as he stood up and limped back. When the other men saw the man limping in, their eyes flashed with astonishment. One of them went up and asked curiously, "What's going on? Why did you come back with a bloody nose and a swollen face after going out for a stroll? Who hit you?" In this manner, other than the old master and the patriarch, is there anyone else who can beat you up like this? Hiss. Can you not ask first? Don't you see that I'm covered in wounds? Quick, help me sit down. It hurts so much. He grabbed the hand of the man beside him and leaned on him with all his strength as he said, "I sacrificed a lot today, but it was worth it." What happened? Several people surrounded him and watched. Seeing that the handsome face that he cared about the most was beaten into a pig's head, some of them could not help but laugh out loud. Chapter 165. That's right. I already told her not to hit my face, but she still chose to hit my face. She's too ruthless. The blue-robed man was so agitated that he pulled at the wound on his face. He sucked in a breath of cold air. I limped all the way back. When the servants saw me, they all covered their mouths and snickered. I had to cover half my face with my sleeves. I really don't have the face to see anyone. Could it be that your injury was caused by Guanxilin? It shouldn't be. With his strength, he's still no match for you. Could it be the old master? One of them guessed curiously. Hearing this, the blue-robed man's mouth twitched, revealing a proud smile. I knew you wouldn't be able to guess it. Because I couldn't guess it either, I had to pay such a painful price. Ouch, it hurts. He pulled the white-robed man and said, Fan Lin, quickly bring me some medicine. It hurts so much. Let's make it clear first. Otherwise, you can apply the medicine yourself. The white-robed man, Fan Lin, sat on the side and didn't move. Seeing this, the blue-robed man said, It was the eldest miss who hit me. She was very ruthless. Also, let me tell you. He lowered his voice, her strength is very strong, and her skills are also very strange. She's definitely above you and me. As he spoke, he pointed at the wound on his face. Do you see? If I had the slightest strength to resist, I definitely wouldn't have let this handsome face of mine, which has charmed thousands of girls, be beaten into a pig's head. Hearing this, everyone was stunned. Eldest miss. She was the one who beat you up like this. Otherwise, who else in the manor do you think has this ability? He curled his lips and said, I told you. This eldest miss is not simple. You don't believe me. Right, I just called her master. I just need to swear an oath. You recognized her as your master. They were a little surprised. He only went out for a trip, and he actually recognized her as his master. That's right, I recognized her. Ouch, quickly bring me some medicine and apply it. Fan Lin stood up and looked at the few people who were deep in thought. He then walked into the room and took out a medicine box to treat his wound. That night, Fengjiu went to her grandfather's room. Little Feng, Ling Shuang said you had something to tell me in the evening. What is it? The old man sat at the table and asked Fengjiu. Fengjiu picked up the teapot on the table and poured 2 cups of tea before saying, Grandfather, the black market asked for my help. The spaceship they sent to pick me up will probably arrive tomorrow. This trip will take at least a few months, so I'll have to trouble you to keep an eye on things in the mansion. Send a spaceship to pick you up. The old man looked excited. Is it that kind of flying magic tool? That's not something an ordinary country has. Could it be that the country you're going to is at least a 6th-tier one? She shook her head. I haven't asked about this yet, so I'm not too sure. I'm thinking, should I tell father about the ghost doctor's identity? I don't want him to worry when I'm away for a few months. No need, no need. Your father shows everything on his face. If you tell him, he won't be able to hide it. If one day he's drinking with someone and is in a good mood, the entire Yunhua city will know. The old man waved his hand and said, Don't worry, I'll tell your father that I let you go out to train and won't be back for a while. Hearing this, she couldn't help but tease, Grandfather, are you sure you're not talking about yourself? Chapter 166. Fengjiu chuckled. You don't have to worry about that. Grandfather, look. She took out 3 bottles and placed them on the table. What is this? The old man took a sniff. He knew it was medicine, but he didn't know what it was for. This is a spirit-enhancing pill that I developed for you. After taking it for a while, your amnesia should be cured. This can still be cured. The old man looked at her in shock. Your symptoms aren't very serious. After eating this, you should be fine. She smiled. After telling him a few more things, she sat for a while before returning to the courtyard. The next day, before dawn, Fengjiu left quietly with Ling Shuang, heading towards the black market. Early in the morning, when the 8 Phoenix guards came to the courtyard to look for Fengjiu, they couldn't find her anymore. They originally thought that she had just gone out, so they didn't think much of it. Who would have thought that they would miss her for several months? When a luxurious flying ship flew over Yunhua City, the entire city was in an uproar. Even the king, Murongbo, in the palace, hurriedly sent people to find out what was going on. One had to know that even the country of Glorious Sun did not have a spaceship. Countries that owned spaceships were at least tier 6 countries or above, or only powerful forces could own such a flying instrument. After hearing the news, the palace guard hurriedly reported, "King, the flying ship stopped in front of the black market. It said that it's here to pick up the ghost doctor." Pick up the ghost doctor. Murongbo was startled. He stood up and immediately walked out with large strides. At the same time, he shouted, "Quickly prepare the horse." He still hadn't had the time to ask the ghost doctor for medicine, so how could he let him leave? Moreover, if he left, when would he come back? When Murong Xian heard the news, he was also stunned. The ghost doctor. Was it that devilishly charming red-clothed man that night? Immediately, he came back to his senses and strode out. He was going to ask for medicine. To ask for medicine that could remove scars and restore his looks. Feng resident Feng Xiao hurriedly walked out. When the butler saw him, he hurriedly stopped him and asked, "Master, your body hasn't recovered yet. Where are you going? Didn't you see the flying ship just now? It said that it's here to pick up the ghost doctor. I have to hurry to the black market and ask for some medicine that can remove Chinga's scars before he leaves." He pushed him aside and walked out. Without looking back, he said, "If the old master asks, tell him that I'll be back soon." Master! Master! Hey, you guys, follow master, I'll go inform the old master. The butler hurriedly called a few guards to follow him while he ran to the backyard. What? He went to the ghost doctor to ask for medicine. The old man's eyes widened, his face full of shock. Yes. The patriarch's body hasn't recovered yet. If he ran out like that, I wouldn't be able to stop him. The butler said worriedly. Hurry, bring him to to me. Toot. So, and he to go to test one by one, they rushed to the black market. In a private room, several people were sitting and sizing each other up. I didn't expect the ghost doctor to be such a peerless young master. It's really better to meet him than to hear about him. Chapter 167. Fengzhou's lips curled into a faint smile. I'm flattered to have 2 great spiritual masters and a foundation establishment cultivator come and pick me up. Hearing this, surprise flashed across the eyes of the people in the room. They didn't expect him to be able to tell their cultivation level. However, they couldn't sense any profound energy or spiritual energy from his body. Then, how did he see through it? This is also to show how much our black market values you. Even if we're here to pick you up, we naturally can't neglect you. The middle-aged man said with a smile and cupped his hands. It's getting late. The flying ship is waiting outside. Please. He gestured for him to go ahead first. Fengzhou replied. He stood up and brushed the red robe on his body before walking out. Ling Shuang, who was guarding outside the door, was dressed in male attire. He was dressed in black with his hair tied up and a mask on his face. When he saw her come out, he followed beside her and went down together. At this time, the black market was already surrounded by people. They had heard of the ghost doctor before but had never seen her before. What kind of person was she? Therefore, when the magnificent red figure walked out from inside, the crowd cheered loudly after being stunned. Ghost doctor! Ghost doctor! It's the ghost doctor! Everyone pushed and jostled, wanting to go forward. However, the flying ship was surrounded by the black market's guards and they couldn't enter at all. Guan Shilin stood at the top of the black market and watched her leave. He didn't go near her because if he got too close to her, her identity would be exposed. Please. The middle-aged man gestured for him to board the ship. Fingjiu replied and stepped onto the flying ship. Ling Shuang followed behind. After they boarded the spaceship, it rose into the air and flew away from the ground, heading towards the sky. When Murong Bo, Murong Yishuan and Feng Xiao rushed over, they could only see the flying ship gradually getting further and further away. Not long after, it disappeared into the clouds. 3 days later, at night, in a hot spring behind the black market in Enchanting country. Fingjiu took off her clothes, took off her mask, and walked barefoot into the water. Her skin was also soaked in the water as she half-squatted. She found a place to sit in the hot spring and placed her hands flat on the slippery stone beside her. She raised her head slightly and narrowed her eyes comfortably. The exhaustion from the past 3 days was soothed by the hot spring. It was so comfortable that she felt drowsy. She had already set up a formation outside the hot spring, and Ling Shuang was standing guard outside. Therefore, there was no need to worry about anyone breaking in. Although it was comfortable, she knew that she could not soak in the hot spring for too long. Therefore, after soaking for about an hour, she prepared to get up. However, just as she was about to stand up, through the steam of the hot spring, she vaguely saw a black figure flash in as if he was avoiding something. This caused her body, which was about to stand up, to sink into the water. With the help of the mist, her body was covered. Are you hiding from someone? Her lazy and slightly hoarse voice sounded so indifferent, and even revealed a sense of calmness, as if the sudden intrusion of a stranger did not startle her. The voice that suddenly came from behind made the black figure, who was leaning against the stone wall, startled. He instantly turned around and looked in the direction of the voice. Chapter 168. Looking through the mist, he could only vaguely see a figure sitting in the water. He could vaguely see a pair of perfectly round shoulders exposed outside the water, as well as a beautiful and enchanting snow-white neck. However, due to the hazy mist, he could not see the face clearly. However, judging from the other party's calm demeanor and lazy and slightly hoarse voice, the other party was obviously a man. After all, if a woman were to encounter such a situation, she would have screamed out loud. "I'm sorry to disturb you." When he spoke, Fingjiu, who was in the water, widened her eyes in astonishment and almost exclaimed, "Uncle." She and he really met everywhere in life, didn't they? She had just arrived at the Enchanting Kingdom and she actually met him again. However, it was obvious that he did not recognize her. Thinking of this, she relaxed and leaned against the hot spring water. Looking at the figure standing upright by the side, the corners of her lips curled, revealing a teasing smile. I was shocked. I thought that someone from the black market had sent a beauty to me. I didn't expect that it would be a man. Hearing this, Ling Mohan's brows furrowed even deeper. His deep gaze looked through the mist, trying to see the person clearly. However, the person's next words made his mouth twitch uncontrollably. His face immediately darkened. You should know that I'm completely naked in the water. You're staring at me with such naked eyes. Could it be that you're interested in men? You're thinking too much, sir. His voice was a little stiff, but that masculine and magnetic voice was still so pleasing to the ear. Just as she was about to leave, she heard the sound of a search outside. She stopped in her tracks and suddenly turned back to look at the water. Just as she was thinking of how to get up, she suddenly saw him staring at her. She could not help but be startled. Suddenly, she seemed to have thought of something. However, before she could say anything, she saw him striding towards her. Stop right there. She shouted coldly. The mist could not block her vision at such a close distance. She was completely naked now. If he came closer, there would be nowhere for her to hide. Ling Mohan's footsteps did not stop, and he continued to walk in large, steady strides. A low and magnetic voice came out of his mouth. As far as I know, there should be another life gate in this array, and it's right behind you. Nonsense. Of course I know. Fengzhou's eyes widened as she looked at the figure walking towards her. She clenched her teeth and used her profound energy to scrape the surface of the water, causing the water droplets to fly towards him. At the same time, she slapped the surface of the water again, causing a curtain of water to splash up. Her entire body spun out of the water, and she took out a set of red clothes from her space. Using the curtain of water as a cover, she quickly put it on. However, just as the water curtain fell back into the hot spring, she put on her red clothes and landed on the ground. However, because she was barefoot, she slipped on the slippery stone and fell forward. Ah! She lost her balance and fell forward. She instinctively grabbed onto anything that could stabilize her body, but who knew that she would hear the sound of cloth tearing? She looked over in astonishment and was immediately dumbfounded. The uncle's pants were torn from the back, revealing the enchanting and eye-catching underwear inside. Chapter 169. Ling Mohan's face darkened as he turned around. He saw the disfigured man with disheveled hair staring at his pants in astonishment, as if he had been provoked by something. His mouth was wide open, and his hand was still holding onto the torn pants. Seeing this, he lifted his foot and kicked, "Let go." Plop. She was stunned as she was kicked into the hot spring. After drinking a few mouthfuls of hot spring water, she flopped her head out of the water, only to see that the man who was standing there a moment ago was gone. Hiss. You kicked me again. Just you wait. She slapped the water angrily and walked out of the water. When she heard the commotion outside, she quickly changed into a dry robe, rubbed her sore shoulder, put on a mask with a cold face, and walked outside. What's the noise? Her voice was cold, and she shouted angrily. Master. Ling Shuang came to her side and said, They said that someone stole a few elixirs from the black market treasure house and chased that person here. They insisted on going into the hot spring to have a look. Fengzhou stared coldly at the black market guards in front of her. Her eyes fell on the middle-aged man who was the leader, and she lifted her foot to kick him. Bang! The middle-aged man was not prepared and was kicked in the stomach, and he rolled a few steps away. He gasped and shouted angrily, What are you doing? Fengzhou stepped forward and looked at him with cold and sharp eyes. Who gave you the guts to be so presumptuous in front of me? Didn't my servant tell you that I was bathing inside? You! The middle-aged man glared at her, but he did not dare to do anything to her. Still staring at me? Don't you want your eyes? Her voice was cold, and her eyes were cold. Her words shocked the middle-aged man, and he immediately lowered his head, not daring to stare at her. Humph! She snorted and waved her sleeves, then walked into the courtyard. After the two of them left, the middle-aged man raised his head and clenched his fists under his sleeves. His voice was filled with disdain and contempt as he said, Someone from a small ninth-grade country really thinks he's someone important? If you make a fool of yourself tomorrow, I want to see what qualifications you have to be so frivolous. Back in the room, Ling Shuang saw that she was still angry. Thinking of the movement he had heard before, he could not help but blame himself and kneel down. This subordinate has neglected his duty, please punish me. Sitting by the table, Fengzhou poured a glass of water and drank it. He waved his hand and said, Get up. It has nothing to do with you. She lowered her head and said, No, it's this subordinate who didn't guard well and allowed someone to sneak in and disturb master. Even I'm no match for that person, let alone you. She said nonchalantly, Besides, I didn't lose anything. On the contrary, I took off his pants. Speaking of this, her face revealed a strange expression. Thinking of that red underwear, the corner of her mouth could not help but twitch. Ling Shuang, who was kneeling on the ground, could not help but raise his head in shock. All right, rest well tonight. She indicated for him to go back and rest. She poured herself a few more glasses of water and drank it while thinking. Seeing this, Ling Shuang acknowledged and left. The next day. Chapter 170. Fengjiu responded. Seeing that she was somewhat full, she put down her chopsticks and wiped the corners of her mouth. Then, she walked towards him. Let's go. Please. The middle-aged man's actions were respectful because he knew that the person in front of him was not an ordinary person. Naturally, he could not offend her. Although he was from a small ninth-grade country, he was not the least bit surprised or curious when he saw a flying ship for the first time. It was as if he was used to seeing flying weapons and could not arouse his curiosity at all. Moreover, after coming to the Greenting Kingdom, he had displayed such calmness and elegance that no one dared to underestimate or neglect him. The middle-aged man brought Fengjiu to the main hall in front. After reporting to the inside, he said to Fengjiu, "Ghost Doctor, please come in." Fengjiu walked in while Ling Shuang was stopped outside. The few people in the main hall did not hide the fact that they were sizing up the devilish red figure who walked in. Some of their eyes were filled with contempt and disdain while others were probing and judging. While they were sizing her up, Fengjiu's gaze swept past the few people in the main hall and landed on the person sitting in the main seat. That was a middle-aged man dressed in black brocade robes. His legs were steady as he sat upright. His entire body exuded the aura of a superior. At this moment, his sharp eyes were staring at her and sizing her up. "Sir, please take a seat." The middle-aged man sitting in the main seat said in a deep voice. He raised his hand and gestured, pointing to the first empty seat on the left. Fengjiu smiled and walked up to the first seat on the left. She turned around and was about to sit down when a force pushed the chair away. Seeing this, she glanced at a middle-aged man on the lower left. Seeing that the other party revealed a provocative gaze, she couldn't help but reveal a smile. She released a strand of profound energy from her palm, and the chair that was originally pushed back returned to its original position in the next moment, and she sat down calmly. Ga. The sound of the chair rubbing against each other was heard. Then, the middle-aged man on the lower left flipped his chair and fell to the ground. He exclaimed in shock. "Ah!" When the other people saw this, they couldn't help but reveal a smile and slightly avert their eyes. Seeing this, the middle-aged man's face flushed red. He stood up angrily and shouted at Fengjiu, "Do you know who I am? How dare you? How dare you make fun of me?" Hearing this, Fengjiu, who was sitting lazily, glanced at him and said, "Although I don't know who you are, I guess you're from the black market. They say that visitors are guests. Why? Is this how you treat your guests? You? Medicine Master Lin, Her Excellency the Ghost Doctor is right. Those who enter are our guests. We cannot be rude." The middle-aged man at the head of the table spoke. His deep voice carried a hint of authority, causing the embarrassed Medicine Master Lin to shut his mouth. At this moment, the others said, "President, look at him. He's still wearing a mask and looks like he doesn't dare to show his face. We don't know where he's from. How can we trust such a person?" "That's right, President. No matter what, we can't bet all of Qingting Black Market's reputation on this person. Look at him, he looks so lazy, and I don't think he's old. How can someone like him take on such a heavy responsibility?" Chapter 171. If I remember correctly, you guys were the ones who invited me to help. Fengjiu looked at them with a half-smile. "Why do you make it sound like I'm the one who wants to help you?" She dusted her robe and stood up, saying, "Since you don't trust me, then find someone else. To be honest, I'm not interested in this matter." As soon as he finished speaking, he didn't wait for them to say anything more and walked out. "Ghost Doctor, please wait." The man in the main seat spoke, and the guards outside the hall immediately stopped her. But just as they stopped her, they were sent flying by Fengjiu's sleeve. "Get lost. With a cold shout, the two guards flew out and fell to the ground with a muffled groan. The few people in the hall also stood up because of her sudden attack. Someone shouted angrily and pointed at her, "Men! Capture this impudent brat! All of you, stop!" The middle-aged man in the main seat shouted in a deep voice. The guards who were surrounding him stopped and looked at him. Even the few people in the hall looked at him. "Get out!" The middle-aged man walked over and shouted at the surrounding guards. Then, he looked at Fingzhou and said apologetically, "Ghost Doctor, please don't misunderstand, I didn't mean it that way. It's just that this competition is no small matter. Our Enchanting black market has lost for 3 years in a row, and we can't afford to lose again. Also, the higher-ups have said that if we lose again this year, my position as the president will be over, so..." He said with a bitter smile. "President Ko." Feng Zhou looked at him and said, "Originally, I came to help because of the black market. But now that I'm here, President Ko, I'm very dissatisfied. If you still want me to help, then we have to talk about the reward." President Ko was stunned for a moment, then nodded, "Of course, as long as we win this competition, I won't mistreat you, Ghost Doctor." Hearing that, Fingzhou smiled with satisfaction. "When is the spiritual medicine competition?" "It's 3 days from now." Fingzhou walked in again, saying, "Then tell me clearly. That way, I can learn more about it." All right. President Ku saw the confidence in his words and his heart settled down. He told him about the elixir competition in detail. 3 days later today was the day of the annual competition between the pharmacists of Enchanting Kingdom. Because the pharmacists sent by the black market of Enchanting Kingdom had lost for 3 consecutive years, this year's competition was very important. When Fingzhou arrived at the location of the competition, the peak of Mount Qingnan, he could see that the entire mountain was packed with people. Because they were participating in the large competition, they directly arrived at the top of the mountain before landing, avoiding the densely packed crowd below. After getting off the flying beast carriage, Fingzhou's sharp eyes saw a familiar figure sitting in a conspicuous position on the stage. Seeing this, a strange look flashed across her eyes. She gestured with her chin and asked President Ku beside her, "Who is that bearded uncle?" "Bearded, uncle." President Ku was stunned. Following Fingzhou's gaze, his gaze landed on the tall man with a reserved aura. He couldn't help but smile, shaking his head. "Ghost Doctor, this is your first time in Enchanting Kingdom, so you don't know that this person's identity is not simple." Chapter 172. His surname is Ling, and his name is Mohan. He is a teacher at the most famous school of stars and clouds in the Enchanting Kingdom. His background is mysterious, and he is an immortal cultivator. His cultivation level has already reached the golden elixir level. More importantly, he is 25 years old, so you can call him a venerable or a senior. Only 25 years old. She had a strange look on her face and said, "Why does he have a beard at 25 years old? I thought he was at least 35 years old." Haha, that's why I said his background is mysterious, because no one has seen his real face before. He said with a smile, and his gaze fell on Ling Mohan. "I didn't expect him to come here. Later, I'll pay him a visit. Ghost Doctor, do you want to come with me?" The mysterious teacher at the School of Stars and Clouds. She nodded her head in realization, and no one knew what she was thinking. When she heard that he wanted to pay him a visit, she smiled. Of course, it's good to know such a strong person. Hence, President Ko led her to Ling Mohan. When they appeared, Ling Mohan noticed the devilishly charming man in a dazzling red robe. He was no stranger to the red robe and the red spider lily mask, because these two things were placed aside in the hot spring that night. Thinking of this, his sharp gaze fell on the man, scrutinizing him. That night, due to the mist from the hot spring, he was unable to see clearly. However, that disfigured face was clearly reflected in his eyes. At this moment, he had no choice but to admit that this red-clothed young man was as dazzling as the sun in the sky. His temperament was unrestrained and noble. Especially that pair of serene and smiling eyes, it was unforgettable. But looking at that pair of eyes, why did it feel somewhat familiar? Teacher Ling, long time no see. I didn't expect to meet you here. It's a pleasure, a pleasure. President Ku had already hurried forward to greet him with a smile. Hearing this, Fingzhou couldn't help but smile. If President Ku knew that the man who stole his precious elixirs was the bearded man in front of him, he probably wouldn't greet him. So it's President Ku. He stood up and also cupped his hands in greeting. His gaze fell on Fingzhou as he asked, "This is?" He's a pharmacist that our black market invited to participate in the spiritual medicine competition. This. And he's called the Ghost Doctor. Because he didn't know what the Ghost Doctor's name was, he didn't know how to introduce her. Uncle Ling, Fingzhou called out in a crisp voice. Her eyes were filled with a sly glint, and the corners of her lips curled up in an infuriating smile. She said as if they were familiar with each other, "If Uncle Ling thinks it's hard to call me Ghost Doctor, then you can call me Ghost. Hearing the word Uncle Ling, Ling Mohan unconsciously stroked the beard on his chin and looked thoughtfully at the young man in red in front of him. There was a strange and puzzled expression on his face. Uncle. It wasn't a matter of a day or two that he had a beard, but no one had ever called him that before. However, that crafty little girl he met in the Jiufu forest also called him uncle. This young man in red also called him uncle. Could it be that he really looked very old? She narrowed her eyes and grinned. That's right. I'm only 15 this year. I heard that uncle is already 25. That's 10 years older than me. If you're not an uncle, then what are you? Chapter 173. He couldn't help but size up the masked ghost doctor in front of him. Because he couldn't see his face clearly, he guessed that he was in his 20s based on his words and actions. But who knew that he said he was only 10 or 15? At this moment, he couldn't help but wonder if it was the right decision to bet the black market's reputation on him this year. Just as President Ku was wiping the cold sweat from his forehead, Ling Mohan looked deeply at Fingzhou. He knew that the other party recognized him and knew that he was the man in black who had barged into the hot spring that night. A middle-aged man walked over and glanced at Fingzhou in red with contempt. Then, he looked at President Ku and teased, 15. President Ku, where did you find this kid who is still wet behind the ears? Is there no one else in the black market? You actually invited such a little kid to participate in the spiritual medicine competition? Aren't you afraid that he will embarrass the black market? When President Ku heard this, he looked sharply at the middle-aged man and said rudely, "You don't have the right to comment on our black market's affairs. Your black market has lost for 3 years in a row." I can understand President Ku's feelings. The middle-aged man looked at him provocatively and pulled over an 18 or 19-year-old young man behind him. He smiled fawningly at Ling Mohan and said, "Teacher Ling, this is a kid." He was interrupted before he could finish his sentence. Ling Mohan didn't look at the father and son, only looking at Fingzhou and said, "Little brother, the spiritual medicine competition hasn't started yet. Why don't you walk with me?" "Sure." She smiled and said to President Ku, "I'll be back when the competition starts." President Ku looked at Ling Mohan in surprise, then looked at Fingzhou and replied, Okay. Go ahead." Looking at the two of them, one in black and one in red, walking towards the mountain, he was puzzled. Did these two know each other? "What's your relationship with the black market?" Ling Mohan asked. Looking at the young man in red who was shorter than him, he frowned. No wonder he called him uncle. When he stood next to him, he really looked like a child who hadn't grown up. "As you can see, they asked me to help them get first place," she said casually and found a stone to sit on. He stared at him with his deep eyes and asked, "Have I seen you before?" Hearing this, Fengjiu looked at him. Hearing this, Ling Mohan only felt a chill, especially when the other party was staring at him like a wolf, which made him feel even more uncomfortable. What's wrong with you? Fengjiu, who got up at some point, leaned in front of him and asked, almost touching his chest. What are you doing? Ling Mohan's face fell and he took a few steps back. I didn't do anything, she said innocently. Chapter 174. Seeing him fling his sleeves and leave, Fengjiu laughed softly and followed him with light steps. Before he could get close, he was stopped by President Ku. Little brother Ghost Doctor, the competition is about to start. Come over here quickly, we'll tell you about the other party. He gestured, inviting him to walk towards the other pharmacists in the black market. Seeing this, Fengjiu stopped joking and followed President Ku to where the pharmacists were. She listened as they pointed at some people not far away and introduced their pharmacists' levels and what they were good at. Around an hour later, the spirit herb competition officially began under everyone's preparations and the announcement of the 8 judges from the Alchemists Association. The first round was an elimination round. There was no need for the pharmacists to compete, only the grades and types of the medicines presented by the pharmacists. After each type of medicine was evaluated by the 8 judges, it would be evaluated as qualified or unqualified, and thus eliminated. Qingxing Pharmacy, pain-suppressing powder, too common, unqualified. City South Ruan Family, qi melting liquid, unevenly mixed, too strong, unqualified. Scattered Medicine Association, hemostatic medicine, slow effect, not good, unqualified. Hearing the 8 pharmacists from the Pharmacist Association saying that their medicines were unqualified, the crowd below became more and more nervous. Actually, the medicines that they could take out for the competition were those that they felt were qualified. But, in the hands of the proper Pharmacist Association pharmacists, they were picky and felt that everything was unqualified. They were so strict that their hearts were in their mouths, afraid that their medicines would also be unqualified. With this refresh, out of the hundreds of pharmacists who came from all over the world, only 30 were able to enter the second stage. Those who passed were all from reputable clans and powers. Among them, there was a pharmacist from the School of Stars and Clouds. Little brother Ghost Doctor, with your medicine, the only ones who can compete with you are the pharmacist from the School of Stars and Clouds, and the old man from the Pharmacist Association. He gestured, and continued, the pharmacist from the School of Stars and Clouds did not participate in the competition in the past. I don't know why he is here this year. As for the old man from the Pharmacist Association, he has been first for 3 consecutive years. He is the pharmacist of the association, and a 7th-level pharmacist. What about the pharmacist from the School of Stars and Clouds? What rank is it? Her eyes flashed as a thought formed in her mind. Everyone said that it was difficult to enter the Academy of Stars and Clouds. However, if she entered as a pharmacist and became a teacher, wouldn't she be able to freely read through the treasures of the Academy of Stars and Clouds? The alchemist insignia on his chest indicates that he is a Tier 3 alchemist. His potioneering skills are above that old man's. Speaking up to this point, guild leader Ko could not help but sigh. He already felt that it was impossible for them to win this year. If it was only the 7th-rank pharmacist, it would have been better. However, this year, even the pharmacists from the School of Stars and Clouds had come. This blocked his path forward. It seemed that his position as the president had reached its end. Little brother Ghost Doctor, just do your best. Even if you lose to a rank 3 alchemist from the School of Stars and Clouds, it is not shameful. Fengjiu's lips curled into a faint smile. We haven't even started yet. How do you know you lost? Next, the second test will begin. The 30 pharmacists that have been selected, please come up to the stage. The words that came out from the stage caused the surrounding people to fall silent. They saw a messy pile of medicinal herbs on the long table on the stage. 30 pharmacists walked out from the crowd and went up to the stage. Chapter 175. The red robe fluttered and the crowd could only see a red shadow flashing across the stage. A figure cried out and fell off the stage. Ah! A pharmacist fell to the ground in a sorry state. He was scratched by the sharp stones on the ground. Because he fell in the wrong way, he could not stand up. On the stage, a young master dressed in red stood. His robes fluttered in the wind, and his mask, which was covered with blooming red spider lilies, reflected a dazzling light under the sunlight. Everyone could only see a faint smile on his lips, and his entire body emitted a cold and evil aura. His gaze was contemptuously looking at the middle-aged alchemist who was sitting in a sorry state below the stage. When Ling Mohan, who was sitting on the stage, saw this scene, his deep black eyes flashed with a faint light as he stared at the cold and evil figure. He saw the figure suddenly turn around and meet his sharp eyes without warning. It was also at that moment that the light in his eyes dissipated. He sat there quietly, his face stiff and his expression solemn. Fengjiu looked at him in surprise. He felt that this uncle was a person who hid very well. She had interacted with him many times. However, it seemed that every time she interacted with him, she could find a different side of him. What kind of person was he? The crowd on the stage only glanced at the pharmacist who fell off the stage and did not pay attention to him. The middle-aged man secretly pushed the young man in red. Many people saw it. Therefore, it was not surprising that he was kicked off the stage by the young man in red. The head of the family that the middle-aged pharmacist belonged to had a gloomy face. He waved his hand and said, "Send him down the mountain." They stared gloomily at the red figure. Because they knew that he was from the black market, they did not dare to openly make things difficult for him. A middle-aged man standing next to the pile of herbs on the stage gave each person a list of herbs and said in a deep voice, "Pick up the herbs on the list. The first 10 people to pick up all the herbs on the list will enter the next round. The rest will be eliminated. Begin." As soon as he finished speaking, the pharmacists on the stage picked up the herbs on the list in their hands and fought for the herbs on the table. When the teacher from the School of Stars and Clouds finished picking up the herbs and walked out, he could not help but glance to the side. He glanced at the young man in red who was holding the herb basket and frowned. Fengjiu turned his head slightly and smiled at him. Not long after, 10 people emerged victorious. After the others were eliminated, they immediately entered the final round of the competition. They had to concoct medicine on the spot. The higher the grade of the medicine, the less likely the winner would be. Looking at the dozens of herbs on the table, Fengjiu began to concoct them. Her concoction method was different from others. Even if others saw it, they wouldn't be able to learn it. That was because it was like a modern experiment. Layer by layer, it was processed and refined before it finally took shape. After she concocted a bottle of green liquid, she walked to the 8 appraisers of the Alchemist Association and placed the potion in front of them. "Please examine it. This is medicine. What a beautiful color." One of the female judges, who was in her 30s, looked at the half-filled bottle of medicine in amazement. She found it hard to believe. "Beautiful and elegant sister, this is indeed a potion. I'm not lying to anyone." She winked at her. Her seductive smile and smiling eyes made the 30-year-old female apothecary blush slightly, blush appearing on her face. Chapter 176. At this moment, Fengjiu tilted his head slightly, looked at Ling Mohan and asked with a smile, "Uncle Ling, why are you staring at me?" Hearing this, the female alchemist couldn't help but smile. She looked at Fengjiu with a gentle gaze. "Young man, why don't you tell me the effects of this bottle of medicine?" This bottle of medicine is a level 3 speed increasing medicine. As long as you consume it, your speed will increase by 10 times. Even if a martial practitioner is being chased by a martial master, as long as you drink this bottle of medicine, you will have enough speed to escape. Hearing this, everyone on and off the stage took in a breath of cold air. Pairs of eyes stared at the green bottle of medicine. If what he said was true, then this medicine wasn't as simple as a medicine. It was a bottle of spiritual liquid that could save lives at critical moments. Humph. Preposterous. The alchemist teacher from the School of Stars and Clouds walked over and placed the medicine on the table. He glanced at Fengzhou and said, "This is simply preposterous. I have been in contact with medicine for so many years, but I have never heard of a speed-increasing medicine. This is simply nonsense." That's right. Just based on your age and you are only a level 3 alchemist, you can tell that there is a limit to your medicine refining skills. Her casual words made the old alchemist so angry that his face turned red. He angrily pointed at her and said, You have no respect for your elders. You are simply arrogant and conceited. Ignorant. Alright, stop arguing. This bottle of medicine is indeed a level 3 advanced medicine. The old alchemist in the middle opened his mouth. Everyone was silent. Even the alchemist teacher from the School of Stars and Clouds widened his eyes. President Yu, are you sure? This young man can refine a level 3 advanced medicine. Hearing this, President Yu was displeased. Elder Qin, are you doubting my appraisal skills? Seeing his displeasure, the alchemist teacher from the School of Stars and Clouds quickly adjusted his attitude and respectfully said, I don't dare. President Yu is the president of the Alchemist Guild. You are the authority of the alchemist world. Naturally, you are experienced and knowledgeable. I lost my sense of propriety, please don't blame me. As he spoke, he looked at Fengzhou with a complicated gaze. He couldn't believe that he had lost to a young man. Ling Mohan's eyes moved slightly, and when his gaze fell on the young man in red, he narrowed his eyes slightly. When the president of the black market heard President Yu's words, he was so excited that tears almost fell from his eyes. It's actually a third-grade spirit liquid. It's actually a third-grade spirit liquid. He originally thought that there was no hope, but who would have thought that there would be such a pleasant surprise in the end? How could he not be excited? Just then, 16 people in black appeared. Among them, 10 were at the peak of the foundational level while the other 6 were in the golden core. The moment they appeared, a powerful qi permeated the air and engulfed the entire mountain. Hiss! They're from the Yen Palace. What? Were they from the Yen Palace? Run! Ah! Run! The people from Yen Dian are here. In a moment, the crowd was in a panic. Screams and shouts echoed throughout the mountain. Seeing that the situation was not good, Fengzhou immediately rushed down the stage and shouted, Ling Shuang, run down the mountain quickly. Just as the word run left her mouth, a powerful qi came down on her, causing her body to stiffen. In the next moment, she felt a pain at the back of her neck and she lost consciousness and fell down. Master. Chapter 177. Ling Mohan chased after him, but came back not long after. He apologized to the crowd, the other party came quickly and left quickly as well. I can't see his whereabouts anymore. The people from the Alchemist Guild all shook their heads when they heard this. President Yu sighed, it's not your fault. The people from Yen Dian have always been elusive and powerful. I'm afraid that the young man was targeted by them because of his talent in alchemy. What kind of power is Yen Dian? Will my master be in danger? Ling Shuang came in front of them and asked anxiously. The president of the black market walked over and said, Yen Dian's power is even greater than the black market. Regardless of whether it's the School of Stars and Clouds or the various clans, they are a power that no one can afford to offend. That Yama Lord is even more mysterious. No one knows where Yen Dian's base is. Little brother Ghost Doctor has fallen into their hands. I'm afraid that things are not looking good for him. No. My master will be fine. She shouted loudly and looked coldly at the president of the black market. Your black market has to help me find my master. Don't worry, we will find out where your master is. President Ku did not decline this point. You can rest assured. According to what I know, Yen Dian has recently captured many alchemists and pharmacists. Perhaps your master will not be in danger. The president of the Alchemist Guild sighed as he said this. A good elixir competition was originally meant to select talents, but who knew that the people from Yen Dian would turn it into this? The news spread like a feather in the wind, causing people to sigh endlessly. Everyone was guessing whether the red-robed young man was alive or dead. And, as night fell, a black figure silently arrived at a house in a few leaps. Greetings to the Yama Lord. The 16 black-robed cultivators in the courtyard respectfully knelt down on one knee. Rise! A low and cold voice containing a powerful aura came out. He brushed his robes and sat down at the stone table in the courtyard. As he turned and sat down, his face was also revealed. It was an astonishingly handsome face. His facial features seemed to have been carefully carved by the heavens, and the contours of his face were as sharp as a knife. He was cold and hard, but he did not lose his handsomeness. Under his sharp eyebrows, there was a pair of deep eyes that contained a mysterious light, containing a sharp and intimidating edge. With just a glance, it made people involuntarily lower their heads, not daring to meet his intimidating black eyes that contained a powerful pressure and sharpness. And under that high nose, his thin sexy lips. They were slightly pursed and his whole body emitted a cold and intimidating aura, noble like a god, but also like the king of the world. If Fengzhou at this moment. That's right, the master of Yen Dian, the Yama Lord, was Ling Mohan, whom Fengzhou was familiar with. Ling Mohan was only a fake identity he used to enter Xingyun as a teacher. The beard on his face was also carefully pasted on, enough to pass off as the real thing. How is he? The Yama Lord asked in a low voice. His low voice revealed a trace of laziness and the aura of a superior. Replying to the Yama Lord, the boy we caught is still unconscious. He hasn't woken up. A black-robed cultivator said respectfully. Take good care of him. Tomorrow, follow me back to Yen Dian. Hearing this, the 16 black-robed cultivators were all delighted. Master is going back to Yen Dian. Chapter 178. When the 16 of them heard this, they immediately flew toward the back. Seeing this, the Yama Lord stood up. Just as he was about to walk toward the back, he stopped in his tracks and rubbed his chin. Then, he took out half of the silver mask from the space and put it on before he walked toward the back. When he reached the back, he saw that the red figure on the roof was circling around his subordinates like a ghost. The speed at which he retreated and the ferocious attacks made the Yama Lord's eyes light up. When they were at the top of the mountain, the Yama Lord had knocked him out when he was unprepared. Now that he was on guard, the 2 foundation establishment cultivators under him were unable to take him down. He had to admit that he had impressed the Yama Lord once again. Unfortunately, it was impossible for him to escape now that he had fallen into his hands. Hiss! One of the foundation establishment cultivators in black was kicked by Fengzhou. He took a few steps back and rubbed his aching chest as he cursed under his breath. Fuck! What did you eat growing up? Why are your legs so strong? Fengzhou retracted his leg and threw a punch at another foundation establishment cultivator who was approaching him. He sneered, of course I grew up drinking breast milk. Hearing this, the Yama Lord, who was standing below with his hands behind his back, smirked. His deep gaze landed on the red figure and he ordered, take him down. Yes. The Golden Core stage cultivators who were watching from the side immediately responded. 2 of them flew out, and a strong pressure enveloped the area. With one move, they captured Phone 9. Fuck. Not only are you bullying me with numbers, but you're also bullying me. Hiss. This is so awkward. My hands. She screamed in pain and glared at them in anger. This was the difference in strength. In this world, the strong were respected. Even if her strength was considered one of the best in the country of glorious sun, she was still vulnerable in the face of these powerful cultivators in a mid-tier 6th-tier country. In the face of such a strong opponent, she knew that she could not escape, but she still wanted to try. As expected, her hands were twisted behind her back. Hiss. Usually, he didn't feel any pain when he twisted other people's hands. Why did he feel as if his bones and tendons were about to be dislocated when he was twisted in the opposite direction? Master, we've captured her. 2 golden core cultivators held her captive in front of the Yama Lord. Fengjiu raised her head and saw the man in a black robe with dark pattern standing in front of her with his hands behind his back. Although the other party's face was covered by half a silver mask, revealing only his sexy thin lips below his nose and his cold and hard chin, but his slender and strong physique, his strong and straight figure, and the aura he exuded, still made her eyes light up. At that moment, she whistled like a rich playboy and praised, "What a sexy and seductive man." Seeing him act like a hoodlum in front of their master in front of everyone, the 16 black-clothed cultivators were stunned. They quickly glanced at their master and quickly lowered their heads to hide the uncontrollable smile on their faces. A sexy and alluring man. Talking about their master. This young man probably doesn't want to live anymore. When the Yama Lord heard Fengjiu's words, he raised his eyebrows and the corners of his mouth curled into a wicked smile. Sexy. Seductive. Maybe I can take it as a compliment. However, no matter how one listened to it, that low and magnetic languid voice seemed to contain a fatal danger. Praise, praise beauty. Chapter 179. At this moment, Fengjiu was slightly startled. She stared at the man in front of her and thought to herself, why does this voice sound so familiar? Could it be that I've seen this person somewhere before? That's impossible. This man's aura was so outstanding. If she had seen him before, she definitely wouldn't have forgotten him. Just as she was thinking, she suddenly saw the man in front of her shoot out a few streams of air. She felt her entire body go limp and she fell to the ground. Lock him up. If he escapes, I'll hold you responsible. The Yama Lord ordered in a deep voice. He flicked his sleeves and turned to leave. Yes. The 16 black-clothed cultivators respectfully responded and pulled up the youth who had fallen to the ground. After her body went limp, she felt that the Xian energy in her body had been sealed. Fengjiu's heart skipped a beat. She said, my Xian energy has been sealed by your master. You don't have to pull me, I can walk on my own. Moreover, with you all guarding me, how can I escape? Ha, I advise you not to think about escaping. If you try to escape again, I'll break your legs. One of the cultivators threatened. He released her hand and said, let's go. Fengjiu, who was locked up in the room again, knew that she couldn't escape and didn't have any other thoughts. However, only she knew that the man had only sealed her Xian energy. He didn't know that she had spiritual energy in her body. In this way, as long as she found the right opportunity, she might be able to escape. However, before that, she wanted to understand why these people had captured her. Yama Palace. She didn't remember offending such a power. The next morning, Fengjiu was brought onto a flying boat. When the flying boat left the ground and flew into the sky, Fengjiu, who was originally sitting inside, walked out. She saw the man sitting at the bow drinking wine and was about to walk over when she was stopped. Let him come over. The Yama Lord ordered without turning his head. Fengjiu walked over and sat down without hesitation. She poured herself a cup of wine and took a sip. She asked, whose life are you capturing me to save? Or are you coveting my alchemy skills? Although these people had a strong murderous aura, they didn't want to kill her. Otherwise, she wouldn't have survived until now. As for her, she reckoned that the only thing that could catch people's attention was her medical skills and alchemy skills. Seeing his casual and calm appearance, the Yama Lord's eyes revealed a look of admiration. Aren't you afraid that I'll kill you? If you wanted to kill him, you would have done so long ago. She touched her stomach and asked the guard, Hey, is there anything to eat? Give me some food, I haven't eaten anything since yesterday. The guard glanced at Yen Zhu, and after receiving his signal, he walked into the spaceship. Not long after, he brought out a few plates of pastries and placed them on the small table. Yama Yama's, the Yama Lord's eyes, eat slowly, there's more, there's, of the Yama of Yama, Yayama. Cough, cough, cough. It would have been better if he hadn't spoken, but as soon as he spoke, Fengjiu was so shocked that she choked. The pastry was stuck in her throat, unable to go up or down, and her disfigured face flushed red. The Yama Lord frowned. He watched as Fengjiu poured a cup of water from her chest and gulped it down. She took a deep breath and glared at him.